Thank you.
Yeah, you just let us know when you're good.
Great.
Well,
Appreciate
morning.
it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
so we came and shared agendas with everyone and wanted to just start with a little bit of like housekeeping of some general things, since this is the first time we're doing this way. We do have, because our members of our team change regularly, so it might be a good idea to just do a quick round of introductions with our team, because some people are new faces, and then we can talk about some other details. So why don't we start?
I'm Kelly Bryant. I teach art at DeWitt Middle School.
I'm Aurora Roget, and I teach humanities at ICS.
Catherine Cernera, she, her pronouns. I am the ITA president.
Tammy Romania, Labor Relations Specialist, New York State United Teachers.
David Isley. I teach 6th through 8th grade German, and I'm also first vice president of the union.
Jacob Chapin, 8th grade special ed, Boynton Middle School, and PPRNR chair.
Right. Hey, Lou Bell Brown, I serve as your superintendent.
Good morning, Assistant Don Lacey, Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance. Zach Lind, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources and Technology.
Bob Van Kuren, lead negotiator, except when Dr. Brown is sitting at that table. And I'm second lead negotiator.
Yeah, I hear you.
And we also have Gretchen and Brian in the gallery who are taking notes and will be connecting with the ICSD person to do a meeting summary after the meeting.
Okay, and we have Guldir Velasquez, Assistant Director of Human Resources in the audience.
And who should Brian and Gretchen connect with for meeting summaries afterwards?
Me.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so a couple of just little other housekeeping items. We brought snacks. Everyone should
Thank you.
feel free to have snacks. Nobody makes good decisions when they're hungry, so please, on behalf of all of our members who are contributing to our snack fund.
Right.
We noticed on the ICSD website that the times for our evening sessions are currently listed as 3 to 7, and we thought that we had agreed to 4 to 8.
We'll make that correction. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank
And then the other piece is if we need to caucus from this space, especially during the school day today,
Yeah.
where do we caucus?
It might be easier for us to leave if you need to caucus, and then we can also leave and walk to our caucus place.
Yeah, we'll leave. Are y'all okay staying in this room?
I
Make
think
sure-
as long as we turn off
Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
the
have it.
Zoom and the
And
microphones.
they'll leave. They'll leave. Everyone. No hot,
Figured out our
Gotcha, Bob.
But we get that in.
no hot mic. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, as long as we do that, we're
Yeah.
okay with that. Okay, any other housekeeping items on your end?
All good.
So the first thing that we wanted to discuss and make sure that we're all aligned and in agreement is we read through all of the district's proposals and then categorized them by the themes that we organized our proposals by. And gave everyone a list of where we felt those proposals would be most appropriate to talk about in light of our proposals. And we just want to know if there are any changes that you all would like to make to that, or if we got it right.
Clarifying question.
Yeah.
You're presenting your proposals first, and then we're presenting ours.
Yeah,
And you're gonna do all of yours first.
yeah, but
Okay.
this is, yeah, we'll do all of ours
Cool.
first, then we'll do all of yours, but this is just for as we continue these
Sure,
conversations.
got it. Makes sense.
Can we put your proposals in these categories?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
You-
Then really our main objective today is to give first responses to the proposals. So the purpose is really to establish a baseline for the general receptivity from each side so that we all know
Yeah.
a little bit more about the first thoughts. And to also present any questions for future discussion. So not necessarily questions to answer today, but to help people prepare for the questions that will be part of the discussion when we actually get to those
Oh.
proposals. And we're going to go through starting with the ITA proposals, and we'll start by just, reading the title of the proposal unless anyone wants us to read the entire text of the proposal, but I think the titles should be okay. And then the side receiving the proposal will indicate general receptivity by indicating either tentatively agree as written, open to discussion and negotiation, or not interested at this time.
Got it.
Acknowledging that a proposal can only be removed from the table by the party that presented it. So we're not interested in discussion doesn't automatically strike it from conversation. It's just to help us know where people's heads are at. And then the side receiving the proposal can then voice questions they have for future discussion. If you want to do that in the opposite way and ask the questions first and then give the receptivity, that is totally fine. It's not super strict protocol, but just get the questions out and get a general sense of where people are. Questions? Are we good to go?
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, then we're starting with ITA proposals first. So proposal 1 to negotiate a 3-year agreement. This is where you give us your receptivity and questions.
We're open. As you know, we're proposing a 2-year agreement, but we're open to the conversation. Yeah.
Right, and I guess just as a point of order in terms when the proposals get more textual as we start go through here, I'll just, as an example, the proposal has this agreement, and in the current CBA, it says the provisions of this agreement. Now, it might not make a whole lot of difference, but instead of bogging us down at this table, we can take care of a lot of that type of technical language, outside of negotiations through emails and stuff. So when we say, if we're in agreement or something, there is that technical cleanup that has to happen too. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, and we have a proposal in here that's really about the technical cleanup of
Yeah.
lots of language. That's definitely open. Any questions about proposal 1?
Well, we were also thinking too that the May 1st might be, we can push that back so we can start earlier if the sides want to give notice that they'd like to negotiate. It's currently May 1st, 2028. Could be something like December 31st, 2027. Give us a few more months.
Okay.
Leadway. All right.
Great. Proposal number 2 is to create a step and lane system for teacher salaries.
Clarifying question.
Yes.
Yes, we're receptive to the conversation. We're open to it, obviously. And as I've stated before, we are seeking to provide the most significant pay increases we can. Clarifying question, because we spend a lot of time on the chart, and if folks are looking at that chart, it's pretty complex and detailed. And we spent hours and we put we did some calculations. And to clarify, just so we're talking about the same numbers. We see this as a range between 4% and 15% increases for folks. And more than half of the folks will get a 10% increase, and the other half no less than 4%. So those were our calculations, which is an average of an 8% increase for everyone using the chart. And we haven't gotten to the COLA adjustment. But if we're understanding your proposals correctly, there would be an average of an 8% increase for everybody, and then no less than a 3% increase. And we can get to that with the COLA adjustment too, for everyone. And again, some folks are going to be receiving upwards of 15% in year 1. So that's a clarifying question to answer now or later, but we just want to make sure our numbers are accurate.
Yeah, Brian wrote the proposal.
That is mostly right. The COLA would not come in until after the increases. So the purpose of the 8% in year 1, year 2, year 3 is to build a salary base. After that, the COLA gets rolled in.
And the COLA, the minimum COLA increase was 4%, correct? 3%. 3%. So it'll be a minimum 3% increase every year. After year, in perpetuity, like forever.
Yeah.
Those are the clarifying questions. So our calculations are comparable to yours.
And one other thing, we have not received the data from the ICSD to do the incredible fine tuning of numbers.
Yeah.
For whatever the final work salaries are now. So yes, we want an average of 8%. Yes, that, but some of the specific numbers are still
Sure.
sliding.
And we spent hours on it, and we need to fine tune it as well. That's why as we get into that conversation, it would be important for everybody to know where people will fall.
I think we did send that. Isn't that the data I sent over?
piece.
Okay, we can talk more.
Yes, yeah.
That one piece might be hard. Is that the one I was talking about? Like, I'm not sure how we're gonna get it, but okay, cool. We
Yeah.
can work on separately on that.
Yeah,
Completely fine.
absolutely.
So we're open to the discussion, the clarifying question, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then proposal 3 is the COLA adjustments, which I'm assuming is part of the same conversation.
Yes. And Bob, did you have a question before we move to COLA about the chart as well?
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. This chart is starting salary chart, which we're all familiar with in the current collective bargaining. And then we're also going to use that chart for your proposal to take current teachers, sort of readjust
Yeah.
upwards their current salaries and fit them into this chart with a minimum of 4%, but some could get much more, right? And we understand that, that's fine. There was some question if they don't fit neatly into this chart, right? If the percentage increase is less than 4% for any particular teacher, and then they're given that 4%, they would be off chart, right? What happens in the following year? Are we trying to? Yeah.
So there shouldn't be any moment where a teacher going to that chart comes in at less than 4%.
Right.
Right, so we have some veteran teachers that we've been here for 35 years that are off chart, right? So those teachers will get a 4% raise.
Right.
Any other teachers should be getting at least 4, even year one.
Yeah, right. I get that. And maybe our math was not in line with what you're thinking, but take a 10-year, I'm just picking one, 10-year veteran teacher who, when we do the calculations and we push them into the chart for next year, if their current salary, once pushed into the chart, is less than 4%, they would get 4%, but they might not fit anywhere neatly on this chart at that point, because their current salary times 4% doesn't fit them neatly into the chart. We're just wondering about those situations.
I think that situation wouldn't be a thing. I think their current salary, they're gonna either slot into the chart, or if the chart put them at less, they would get 4% until the chart. So over the 3 years, the chart should catch up.
Gotcha. No, that
To where they need to be.
actually answers the question. Thank you so much. Okay.
One other clarifying number to put out there. The payroll for ITA is about each 1% is approximately $400,000. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that's the number 1% would cost approximately
For next year.
for next year. So an 8% average increase at 400,000 is about $3.2 million. Our state aid increases, just give some folks at 6% increase is about $2.2 million for next year. Our tax levy at around 3%, we may have that number now, but we can give it to you later. Just to give a sense of the kind of monies we're talking about and how we would come up with those kind of numbers next year without making any staff reductions or reallocations, just to make sure we're all talking about the same numbers.
And that 1% plus $400,000 is actually a really useful, helpful number.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think 1% on the tax roll is just slightly over $1 million, is my understanding. 1,075,000.
So
Yeah.
$3 million tax levy potential increase if we went to a tax cap of 3%. So $3 million there. State aid, we're looking at about $2 million. So
2 to 2.5.
to a maximum of 5 million for the entire organization and all bargaining units.
Can you repeat 1% on on a tax?
Is
basis?
roughly, if it's from memory, 1,075,000.
Yeah.
We've been using 1 million. Just in case we're off a little.
It's like our tax levy last year was like 110 million.
And we have some great math teachers here. So we're all, this is a math problem more than anything else. Yeah.
The day that we talk about this,
Yeah.
it will be myself, Tammy, and a number of math
Gotcha.
teachers.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, this is, thank you for the work you've done on this. It's a
Wanted
great
to-
proposal. There's a lot of moving parts and the implication on the money side. This is where I'm glad we're starting here because, and so just to be clear, and maybe some of our questions may seem really rudimentary, but we want to be certain that we're both working from the same thing. the graph that you have is just for next year, right? So there'll be a graph the following year, and we can
Yes.
sort of build our own if you haven't built.
Yeah,
built
we
them.
didn't build all of them out, but Brian has all of them out. Brian,
We have all of them built out, so we have a year 2 and a year 3.
and we have ways to adjust them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Where are we on? We on the COLA or we on chart?
Let's, COLA
That might be-
is where we are,
We backtracked for.
Cost of living adjustment. All right.
living adjustment.
What metric database are you using to determine COLA? Because there are multiple ways to determine it.
So our proposal is that we increase either by 3%, knowing that 3% is kind of fairly
Yeah.
standard in the world of school budget, or CPI for the county.
For the county, that's the part.
And may I just add?
Yeah, go ahead.
And just to be clear, so that COLA, teachers would still be going up their steps, going up their lanes, that would be shifting the step lane charts by that percentage. So that COLA is in addition to the benefits people would receive.
Use the microphone.
Yeah. Thank you, sorry.
That COLA, hello? That COLA is in addition to the benefits a teacher would receive from the step lane chart,
In addition, yeah, we got it.
in addition. Right, so if I go to year 1, year 2, that's a growth, and then the chart gets bumped up.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. And let me just, the chart that's here right now, if you're talking about steps, I don't have the numbers implanted in my head, but they're like somewhere around a little over 1 to 1.5%. If I did no credit coursework during the year and I just, the calendar flipped, I would go up 1.5%, let's say, right? Something like that. The following year, that 1.5%, would the COLA affect the 1.5%?
Yes, right, it would multiply.
All right, so the following year would be, okay.
So you'd go down in a year plus the COLA.
The entire chart
Yeah.
would be multiplied.
But the individual would go from year 10 to year 11. So that there's that jump plus the COLA.
And get the 3%.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, our intent is really to move away from the fluctuations of a system that come from negotiating every year and move into something a little bit more stable so that people can know what to expect from their salaries over the course of their careers.
And
That'd be nice for everybody, wouldn't it?
It would make budgeting so much easier, I think.
it also helps you project into the future if you know where the chart's starting at, as opposed to like,
Mm.
what are we gonna ask for in the next couple of years?
Yeah. And so it's currently written in the years after this chart, like second year and or third year, if we get there, without further negotiations, teachers who are 20 in their 26th year and on would get essentially the COLA, right?
They would not get the COLA, they would get 4%. The COLA, what we're proposing, comes in after the 3 years.
Okay. Oh, okay. No, no.
About the next few years to build our salaries to where they need to be after that.
That's not clear in here, though. Is
That, yeah, we had, so I guess one of our questions is when would the COLA initiate? And I want to be sure you all
because, yeah,
have that answer. Is that a clear answer? So it would be in year July 1st, 2028, the COLAs would kick in?
because we only have one chart. You're alluding to 3 charts.
Well, it's one chart for 3 purposes, and that's why it's really sort of intense. Yeah.
Okay.
There's some work that can be done.
Yeah.
Through the deeper discussion on working out the language of how to make this work in a mutually beneficial
Sure,
way.
absolutely.
But
yeah.
overall, what I'm hearing is receptivity and openness to further discussion of
Yeah.
both the step and lane and the COLA.
Yeah, we all want pay raises.
Yep.
And how we get there is the conversation. Yeah.
Then let's, because I don't want to get in the weeds on
Yeah.
that without the right
Yeah.
team here. Proposal number 4 is to set a standardized overtime rate. Currently, we have an overtime rate that for a lot of work is dependent on your individual salary, and this would set a standardized rate.
We're open to this, yes. We have clarifying questions on several items, including what would be deemed extracurricular activities.
Hmm.
Would that be calling parents, grading papers? Give us some examples of what that would be.
Yeah, there is an entire section of, when we refer to the extracurricular activities, we're referring to the section in the CPA of extracurricular activities. And we recognize that this conversation will also be part of a conversation about professional duties.
Yeah.
That are rolled into the general workday.
Clarifying question, or maybe just for further understanding. So previously we had called this work outside regular school hours.
Yeah.
So you're looking to shift it to called overtime hours.
We are open to discussing the term that we call it, but this is the situations that we're currently paying the personal professional rate for work outside of contract hours would be the types of situations where we would be proposing this for.
Okay, and that previously been like, we had a schedule 42 or 4306 up to 4480.
And it's
That
also
one?
the 1/200th of your salary divided by
Got it.
6
Okay.
personal professional rate, so.
Understood.
Thank you.
Another clarifying question if we could, and we very much appreciate the work and the time and the effort and everything and the intent of these proposals. And I think, us having just agreed to even consider steps is something that hasn't been done in over 20 years in this district, right?
Yeah.
So it's really good. Give us a sense, please, the intensity behind the request for like hourly rate versus if we can focus a lot of our attention and effort on salary and building something good there. Is there the same type of intensity to make sure this happens too from your side, or just give us a sense in terms of how to work on this?
Their guaranteed income for their work to be stable.
Yeah.
The salary is incredibly important to them. A lot of this overtime work is work that the district has a lot of controls over whether or not it happens anyway. So it's a little bit, we are very strongly focused on the salary piece and recognize that the way that we've been doing this type of work is confusing and difficult to navigate. So we, see a place where maybe we'll get fewer timesheets. Yeah, and there's a lot of confusion about what the various activities pay. So we'd really like to be able to have one answer rather than, well, it depends on this or this and what part of the contract are we looking at?
Just we probably for future conversation, but we have questions around like tracking of these systems and checks and balances. It's all the things you and I talk about weekly, but those a lot of questions about the details of that because often that's where the challenges lie. So definitely something we'd want to talk about.
Absolutely, and whether we're talking about it at the table or whether we're talking about making a plan to talk about it in problem solving. I mean, there's vision and there's action plan, and there's a lot of things that are between them, but we need both to really be in alignment.
Cool.
Okay, proposal number 5 is to expand prior experience credit. And this is really just a proposal that will honor, as we bring new people in, that will honor teaching work done in various types of assignments that we see people coming from.
We're open.
And I believe we have a counter proposal.
Yes, we have a counter. All right.
And one of the questions we would definitely have is retroactivity. If a teacher came in 3 years ago and didn't get this and sees a colleague being hired now who does get it, how do we handle that? Of course, we don't need an answer today, but that's just something we need to chat about.
Proposal number 6 is about breaking the block on in-service credit. And before we hear your receptivity, we understand that if we're going to go to a step and lane that's built on these blocks, we may want to pull this as part of that conversation.
You got it.
Proposal number 7 is to compensate teachers that choose to not use the district health insurance, and we know that you have a counter proposal.
One of the things for your side to be thinking about outside of this process is the opt back in. Those are, Tammy, you've probably negotiated this before in other districts, but that's probably the biggest point of contention in terms of how and when and under what circumstances we could opt in or opt back in, what having once opted out.
Great. Okay, proposal number 8 is to increase the sick day buyback at retirement.
We're open.
Proposal number 9 is to provide a sick day buyback for early resignation notification.
We're open. We may have a counter for that too.
Dr. Brown, did you see you were open on number 8?
Yes, yeah. Mhm.
Number 10 is compensation for general education teachers providing student services without additional adult support. And this is for people like David is a really good example who David does not teach a subject that would have a co-taught option for it, yet he is still responsible for providing sometimes really significant modifications to meet student needs. So this proposal is about teachers in situations like his.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions here. Some of them are litigious, some of them connected to state requirements. Y'all want to put some of those questions on the table now, or just say we're open to this one, but have many questions that we want to be asking? We see this as being a protracted conversation about how this would look.
Yeah. You could also, if you wanted to, put all of those questions
Yeah.
together in like one document and send it between now and when we talk about it next.
Plus, you want to put some on the table now, Mary. You good? Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Proposal number 11 is to standardize the compensation rate for related service providers who are taking overages. And this really reflects the practice that we've worked out in the past 2 years. Jen Gondik and I have been working really closely because we have an overage, a piece of contract language that talks about overages when you are teaching an extra section of a class. But when we're talking about people who are providing services, like speech pathology services at 15-minute sessions or 30-minute sessions, we did not have established language. So this just reflects what we have been doing for the past 2 years and puts it into contract language. Proposal number 12 is the fail to fill inclusion class adjustment. And this addresses when a class is taught by multiple adults, one of those adults is absent, and a substitute cannot be found, or the substitute could be reassigned within the building to be of better use. There is an impact on the teacher who teaches a class by themselves that should be taught by two.
And put your question on the table here, Mary. Your question on this one.
We're open, but want to explore the impact, again, the legalities of this as far as meeting individual education plans. One teacher cannot serve as two when we're looking at meeting an IEP. So we hear the challenge of the current staffing model and are open to exploring what that could look like.
Wonderful. We're in alignment with that. Okay, proposal number 13 is compensation for serving on hiring committees and screening committees when those committees meet or require work to be done outside of the contract day.
Yeah, we're open to this, and we would definitely need to clarify what would be outside of contract time. That keeps coming up, but we
Yeah.
rarely say in here what that is.
Yeah. Proposal 14 is compensation for vacancy coverage in inclusion assignments. And this is kind of when the fail to fill that we just mentioned turns into a longer term situation than a per diem, to address that as well. And I think that the legal piece would be part of that conversation as well.
Yeah, the same conversation.
Yeah, they're the same conversation. Proposal 15 is to establish professional paid days to pack and unpack classrooms. Currently, we have our 187 days, one of which is a teacher discretion day. And this would be looking to make 2 of them teacher discretion days, and specifically including the right to use that discretionary day to pack and unpack. Typically for people who haven't been in a classroom in a while, we are generally asked to pack every item in our classroom at the end of the school year so that everything in the classroom can be removed for cleaning. We typically have students up till the very last day of our 187 days. So packing up an entire classroom without disrupting student experience is a challenge, or doing it in half a day when there's also usually meetings is also a challenge. And then on the other end, we have to bring everything back in, unpack the classroom and set up a more welcoming environment for our students while also engaging in professional development.
We're open. I think one of the places for conversation, because this was one of my pet peeves as a teacher as well. How do we do this if we're up against state requirements on instructional minutes?
Yeah.
And we all want more professional development time for all of our educators, particularly our teachers. And this appears to take away some of that opportunity.
Mhm.
So there's a push and a pull. As we're trying to get more time for PD, this proposal in writing would take away some of that opportunity. So again, I think we all want to have a better system for packing up
Yep.
and getting that work done. But I would not want to sacrifice instructional time, minutes, state aid, and PD. So we're open to it, but let's figure this thing out.
Okay. Proposal 16 is compensation for extra help for students. And this proposal really just says that when an extra help situation is going to be ongoing, that we use our alternative instructor system rather than just kind of an ad hoc provide the extra help.
You know, I'm leaning to we are not open to this because I think this can take us down a path. To say to our young people and to our community that our educators won't be available for extra help in writing in this way, unless we come up with some different language. The way we read it and the initial reaction from me was that. And if you have a counter to how I reacted to it based on the language here, please propose that. But as it's written, a young person needing extra help, and we would then shift them towards the AI model.
Oh, we can clarify that it's actually that the teacher continues to do it, but gets paid at the AI rate. That the teacher becomes the AI, the alternative instructor.
Yeah, and I'm getting closer to being open because
We can.
yeah, because even then,
We may
every
come up with
extra.
Okay, proposal 17 is to raise the extracurricular club advisor rate. So currently we have an allocation for clubs and a set stipend rate. And when you divide the number of hours that those club advisors typically offer the club with the stipend, it doesn't match minimum wage. So this would bring this up to minimum wage.
Yeah, we're committed to co-curricular opportunities. We're open to this one. And we may want to look at a cap or at something like that, but.
Okay, great. And proposal 18, and the last of the salary proposals, is to include visual arts in extracurricular arts. So currently all of our visual arts are falling under the club with that stipend that doesn't match minimum wage. And then we have a whole bunch of other activities that are more in depth that have allocated hours to them. We're asking that this be considered.
Cool. My notes disappeared on that one, so I looked at Bob.
Yeah.
Bob said we good to go.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Hey, welcome.
I asked a question, because sitting here as a board member, trying to take what members said, thinking about, of course, the purpose is to increase compensation as much as possible. And when I look at all those things, there's a significant amount of increase in compensation in a variety of ways. Has the union run calculations about what that would mean? So it's not just an 8% raise. If you start adding all that up, and now it comes closer to like maybe 11 or 12% raise.
Yeah.
Right, so has there been calculations about how all that would play out and what that would look like? I'm thinking again from a budget perspective.
Yeah.
So it's not a 3.2% or
Yeah.
3.2 million increase, it's now a 4 or 5 million increase.
absolutely. And I think it's important to know that that every one of these proposals represents a particular challenge for a particular member or group of members.
Yes.
And that we understand that our job here is to do the best for the whole. But yeah, we have run calculations on that, and we'll continue to adjust those calculations as we continue to have these conversations. Okay, so proposals regarding benefits that support our working families. Proposal 19 is pretty lengthy. It is a proposal that looks at the way we do short-term leaves, clarifying some of the designations and codifying some of the practice we already have. And then that also presents a proposal to join the New York State Paid Family Leave Program, which is voluntary for public institutions such as ours.
We're definitely open to discussion. It's fairly lengthy, and a lot of the the details will be related to certain situations that we come across through labor management meetings. And it might be better to like set up a committee to deal with this sort of out of the scope of, so we can talk freely about individual people, what they've gone through, and then we come back here and speak to it more broadly if we can reach an agreement on it.
Kind of, you're thinking like kind of executive session style.
Yeah, and maybe might not need all of us
Okay.
to go over individual cases and what we've seen over the last, 15, 20 years since we've all been working here. There's a lot of individual cases that really deserve to be vetted, and hopefully we can reach an agreement how, more broadly speaking, our employees can be covered.
Yeah, I think just for the sake of the people who are,
Mhm.
for the sake of our members who are watching at home, that it would be easier to have many of these conversations while talking about a few specific cases,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
wouldn't want anyone's personal,
Right.
private
Yeah.
information to be on display in this kind of format.
And even
So
in the
it's-
private meetings, just to be clear, I almost forgot we were on the air, but we don't use names.
Yeah.
We use conditions, but many of us know by the description of the conditions who we're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's a
So,
small town.
yeah, we really do try to keep everything very confidential, even in off, private meetings. So
That's absolutely reasonable. Proposal 20 is a proposal to add domestic partners to health insurance. We do already have a piece in our contract that addresses the if laws change. But this, as we have done more work with disability advocates and with Erin Croyle from the board, we've found that the exclusion of domestic partners from our health insurance does actually negatively impact some groups of protected classes.
We're open. Mhm.
Proposal 21 is to release the cap on tuition waivers for teachers' children to attend ICSD, provided that the students don't put an undue hardship or, force us to have to open new sections of classes and things like that.
We're open to this. When we would just like to make sure we would have to talk to our board quite a bit. This would be pushing against some policy work that has been done. And we would have questions on, I've been here when we've had educators move out of our district and whose kids I've watched grow up in our district. So I would want to speak to what that looked like as a person who's had to say your child had to leave when I wanted them to stay. So let's just, we want to talk through this one a lot.
Also, just some definitions of hardship, right? Like some of your other Proposals outline increased costs related to students in classrooms. So if there's a, like, that in theory could be a hardship. So we
Right.
need to be able to talk through what those things
Yeah.
mean.
Proposal 22 is to provide teachers free breakfast and lunch from the school cafeteria, provided that the food is already made and already there.
I love this idea. Oh man, I wish I was. I'm getting on camera. Okay. Hey, let's be clear about what we're asking for here now. We ran I'm so happy to hear you said you ran the numbers on all of your proposals. When we ran the number on this one alone, it could potentially cost about $1.1 million. Is that anywhere near the figure that you came up with? And that was a conservative estimate.
Yeah. Similar, a little higher. We don't have as much access to the information behind
Right.
the scenes of food service and food service operations.
So conservatively speaking, between your calculations and ours, we're talking about $1 million. Oh man.
People take it the other.
I know that, and I'm realizing that this will be something that will follow my legacy. But I want to say no to this one. With the competing interests we have and what we're trying to do with salaries, to put $1 million towards feeding employees right now. I know Google did it and Apple did it years ago, and they stopped. And we don't have anywhere near the endowment Google or Apple does to be able to provide meals to their employees, as much as I would love to do this. Thank you for accepting my rejection.
You're just gonna
That was tough. Could you feel how hard that was for me, brother? Yeah, that was a tough.
We have put a lot of things on the table.
Let me get the snack. I'm going to give you your snacks back now. As the horrible person that I am. Oh, geez.
So moving into proposals regarding schools that safely support and sustain everyone. Proposal 23 is a protection against reprisal for teaching controversial subjects. And this is really an academic freedom proposal that also codifies our right to teach in a culturally and linguistically responsive manner without facing discipline for doing so.
I think I'm in proposal
23.
23. An explanation of the students, teachers are trusted to be arbiters of these values.
Yeah.
And in the current environment we're in, I would really want to make sure we clarify and explain that. And if you want to do it now, that'd be helpful.
What is the question?
Just a further explanation of what arbiters of these values mean.
That is a fancy way of saying we are professionally responsible for choosing, say, as an English teacher, for choosing the texts that we choose to use. I am an arbiter of the values that we teach in the curriculum because I make those choices.
All right.
I guess a little point of clarification.
Yeah.
Everything works well until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And we can imagine, without getting into detail, that there could be one or two occasions in the future where an educator is teaching or saying things that none of us agree with.
Yeah.
And that we don't feel is in the best interest. What type of ability would the district have to interrupt that type of thing?
I think we are open to hashing out the language to do that. This proposal is really looking at being committed to the district mission and vision for really doing everything we can to present an anti-racist curriculum.
Yeah.
To support all of our students to be as inclusive as possible, and recognizing the political climate that we see our colleagues in many places around the nation facing. This is really meant to give us an extra layer, like, it's the district's vision that we implement daily, and we just want an extra layer of protection that we will be protected by all of you to do that work and do that work well. So I think the details.
Yeah, we all want the same thing.
Great.
Can we put something in there for the superintendent too? Who's going to protect?
Dictate
Okay, I need that in my contract. Who's gonna provide security for me because we're anti-racist?
Is, there is power in everybody being on the same page and knowing who has your back in those situations.
No doubt.
Proposal 24 is to create and furnish designated lactation spaces, which is a New York State law.
Yeah, are you asking us to go beyond the state regulations or
We're
how?
asking to meet the state regulations, which many of our schools do not currently.
We're open to it because we want to talk about how in ways we think we are and want to hear how you do not. So that'd be good to have that public discussion on that one.
Sorry, my dry fingers. Proposal 25 is to create class size and caseload thresholds. So giving us target numbers on the number of students that a teacher should be responsible for at one time.
There's a lot here. Help me out, Zach, as I try to navigate through this. Well, we ran some initial numbers to adjust the class size thresholds. I love that word. In the ways you're proposing, it would cost us about $1.2 million.
That's for
In,
right.
in,
it's for
in the
right
current
now,
year.
Yeah.
So it's $1 million ask to adjust class sizes in these ways when we spent, unfortunately, a few years trying to adjust them to save monies. So we'd be restoring in some ways. And I'm struggling personally, and that maybe some others on my team, with the unintended consequences associated with this. When we have young people who have IEPs or 504s enter a class, does this incentivize classification or de-incentivize declassification? Like there's some unintended consequences that could come from something that's written with thresholds connected to individual young children. And at times how I struggle with grading and the arbitrary approaches to it, and how a 95 is so much different from a 94 at times. And as I see this, one student more in a classroom is 3% more to one salary. Like that, I'm just struggling with what we would be putting into language here that would follow long after we're gone.
Jake, can you remind me of the other unions that inspired this? Because you're the author of this proposal.
Chicago Teachers Union and Portland Teachers Association have these guidelines. They are like wide guidelines, and I like flea markets. This is my starting point. I love to talk about in-betweens.
Yeah. So, and we can also bring those other, we can bring other contracts to look at and see if there are ways that we could, if we're open to discussing this, we can definitely bring in some of that research as well.
Man, I'm stuck on Chicago City schools. I don't know, and in no way do I want us to be in a situation similar to the administration and the teachers union in Chicago. And we're open to it, but I hope you're sensing my hesitancy around us in quantifying young people in class sizes in this way. Yeah.
Intent is really to ensure that teachers are capable of providing the best opportunities
No doubt.
for their students and supporting them the best they can. And we know that when you're trying to juggle too many things at once, it's really hard to do right.
And there's a theme here. Again, we are hoping to increase salaries significantly. And that's our focus. Some of these other ways in which we're increasing compensation for individual employees through escalators and triggers and now connected to kids and IEPs, I'm struggling with all of that. So when I say no to someone, and we say no to some of these things, please know it's our intent to get it back on the salary side instead of having the administrative oversight, the unintended consequences, and all the things that are connected to some of these other things here.
I like a really simple system.
Yeah.
We have, over the course of this collective bargaining agreement and all of its successor agreements since the 1950s, the people before us have created a very, very complicated system that I would love to simplify as much as possible.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm just thinking also that the intent with this is not to get paid more. The intent with this is to make sure that our classes are manageable. And then if it really has to happen, it's not like, oh, you're breaking contract to add one more student. but it's like disincentivized from a district. Right, so this one is not like, we want money because we're teaching special ed kids. It's like,
Yeah.
we want to make sure that we have a manageable caseload so we can serve all of our students.
So if we have further discussion on this, we just would have a lot of questions about circumstances and how they relate to specific things. For example, there's a difference between at the elementary level having general ed teacher having your students for a day versus at the secondary level, you're going to have students for a period. The way it's written, if I had 4 classes with over the threshold, you'd have all sorts of escalators. So we need a lot of clarity about that. But then it does get very complicated very quickly as we look at it. So.
Yep. Everybody all right?
Yeah.
Everything
I-
okay?
I'm realizing it's not a 7 o'clock board meeting. Like there's a lot happening, in this space. We're like shooting in their space today.
Well, luckily they're gonna be
Yeah.
after school.
Yeah, I know. After this, yeah.
Proposal 26 is,
Yes, we're open.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh,
I think
tentative
more
for slots.
broadly speaking, I think you're seeing a theme that it's like, we feel, and I'm sure you do too, and what Catherine just said, we feel like teaching is a profession. It is a salaried profession. And to the extent that we can work very hard with our board and the public to help educate and get things on the salary side, and with the recognition that sometimes a lot, sometimes very little, there's extra work to be done outside of the regular school day. In terms of focusing our energies outside of these meetings and being prepared to negotiate, I think spending more time on the salary side and trying to figure that out with an understanding that some of this, most of it, hopefully would fade away after that.
yeah, I think we're also seeing the effect of a 6-year contract.
Yeah.
And when I started here in this district over 20 years ago, we were not a fully inclusive school district. And seeing the way that the professional duties have shifted over the past 20 years, over the past 10 years, but the way that the collective bargaining agreement has not also made some of those essential shifts is a piece of what we're hoping to address. And that's, 6-year contract means we're bringing a lot of stuff because a lot of stuff comes up in 6 years.
Yeah.
Especially when there's a pandemic in those 6
Mhm.
years.
Yeah.
That's why we proposed too.
Proposal 26 is guaranteed workspaces for all teachers and really focusing on making sure that those workspaces meet the needs of the work that the teachers are doing as much as we can with the facilities we have.
Yeah, we really wish to see how many spaces you anticipate this being and how much money we struggle to quantify it, but we would love to hear what you think.
Proposal 27 is to secure workers' compensation days for on-the-job injuries, and this would really, the functional change here is that if a teacher is injured on the job, that we would wait for a determination from the Workers' Compensation Board before we pull sick days, rather than pulling sick days from the member before we get that determination.
Right. And we're open to discuss this, and I think we even have a
Yeah,
counter
you have a-
proposal, so yeah.
Proposal 28 is mandatory annual ENL professional development. This is a professional requirement for many of our teachers because of their teaching certification, and we're looking to just make sure that it's codified in the professional development plan.
For things that are codified in state law, state requirements, you are now wanting them to be in the contract as well? Because this one is.
So one of the challenges that we face is that our members go to the collective bargaining agreement to understand rights, but don't always go to law to know what their rights are.
I wonder why. Yeah.
That when you go to law, you sometimes find laws that don't apply to us. So in some
got you.
situations, like when we worked on the noonday lunch hour last year, we put a reference to the labor law in the collective bargaining agreement as a signal of like, hey, you should know this is the piece.
We're open to, and maybe we put language in when state law changes, the contract automatically changes as well?
Yes.
Because it doesn't say that, yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Proposal 29 is to extend the lunch period from 30 minutes to 40 minutes.
Yeah, we're open to these conversations and maybe doing our counters, we can,
Yeah, and just, we'll have some questions about, when we expand that from what the state law is. I know there's also a window, so then the question is, can it overlap that window? Like, so there's just some like very technical things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have like so many note takers here. Just like
Yeah.
take my own notes. Proposal 30 is equitable early dismissal for emergencies, and that it's there. Every effort will be made recognizing that emergencies are hard to standardize.
yeah, I know I'm gonna say no to this one. Be- Because the way I'm interpreting it, if a squall, I love that word now. I shouldn't have said that. But if a squall happens in the middle of the day and we have to release early, and because of the way our transportation works, elementary leaves before secondary. So we're now automatically paying secondary teachers overtime.
No. It would be that if the day extends beyond the regularly scheduled school day. So if we have, say, a squall hits at a time where our elementary school needs to dismiss after our secondary school.
Oh, that's never happened. Okay, that's why I didn't
But it could.
read it that way.
Okay.
And we read it the exact opposite.
For example, the buses got so delayed. And this goes to that policy around emergency closures of the staff needs to stay at the school until all the students are dismissed. There could be a situation where buses from our secondary schools are leaving at 4:15 in the afternoon. Our teachers normally don't work until 4:15 in the afternoon.
Okay, I'm much more open to it now.
Okay.
I hope you understand how I was reading it. That's the exact opposite of what I was reading.
There are some questions about, because you say grade levels, like different schools, sometimes different things happen.
Yeah.
So there'd be questions about clarifying that.
Yeah, if one building lost electricity, the rest of the district's fine. We might send kids home from that one building. What does that
Right.
do in
Yeah,
terms
yeah,
of-
no, that applies now to this after contract hours is what I'm understanding.
Yeah. I
Right.
think we are in no way trying to double dip.
No,
Okay.
we appreciate that. Yeah.
This is in a situation where it wouldn't actually be double dipping.
Yeah. I mean, we just to be absolutely clear, because all of us read it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so the situation that has happened, albeit irregularly over the last 20 years, snow squall hits, we need to send everyone home, but because of our transportation, we start with elementary, right? And so they leave probably close to 2 hours before we can get back around to middle and high school and let those folks release. So there's a disparity. Elementary teachers are going home sooner than their secondary colleagues. That's not, this proposal has nothing to do with that. That's just like, it's the luck of the draw.
That may have been the emotional piece that this proposal started from, and that
Gotcha.
is not what this.
And that's the emotional reaction you got from us.
All right. No, that's very helpful.
There was that day.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
okay, Dave.
Yeah. Thank you.
It
Okay.
scarred me.
Proposal 31 is around collaborative master scheduling to get more teacher involvement in master scheduling for a school, as well as master scheduling for like teaching assignments.
Got what we said about this. There was one that had a date on it, though. This is not the
June,
one.
yeah, this June 30th is like, we appreciate why it's like before teachers leave for the summer, but it realistically isn't practicable. We just, at that moment in time, there are so many things in fluctuation in the district that it's usually, you know, end of July, early August before everything is settled. And so that's a tough date to
Well,
meet.
it is important to note that that date has not changed from what is currently in the contract.
Right, but
I also recognize that it's a challenge.
yeah, we wanted an opportunity to talk about that date, seeing it in your proposal, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Thank you, Brian.
okay. The next section is a pretty chunky one. Proposals regarding time to work while at work. Proposal 32 is to establish and in many cases just codify, because we're already doing it, common planning time for inclusion assignments. And this proposal outlines what we feel is an appropriate minimum common planning time for the various inclusion assignments that we implement across our district. Recognizing that integrated co-teaching requires much more adult to adult collaboration than like consultant teacher indirect.
So I want to begin by first thanking educators who in our district, I'm really grateful that we have educators who pursue an inclusive teaching model and that we have caregivers and parents who also give us feedback. And I think we all share the same goal of meeting the needs of young people. So I have a lot of follow-up questions about this. So there's negotiating it in a contract, and then there's improving our systems.
Yeah.
And so I would very much like to suggest we move forward with in-depth conversations on practitioners on where the unmet needs and challenges are, and a concrete way to offer some practical supports now and not wait much if there are unmet needs that are surfacing for folks. I'd really like the opportunity for us to address those sooner rather than later. I think we also have an opportunity with this one, and maybe you have thought this through. How is this differentiated from the current PLC time and prep time that is in contracts? And how is this co-planning time different or the same? Maybe we just need more of a shared understanding, or I think we do need a shared understanding of that before pursuing this further. And then do you have an estimate of how many more staff overages and costs for this one? Those are some of the main questions we have.
Yeah, as we can work on that. We may end up having to request some more data around like the class, like what are like numbers of what we're currently offering, how many classes are we, you know, all that kind of stuff. So we might not have enough data to answer those questions immediately, but I think we'll work together to find it. Proposal 33 is to define what professional duties a prep time should be used for.
Yes, we'll have a counter proposal.
Proposal 34 is around the scheduling for secondary teachers, looking at the way we use collaborative planning time, personal planning time. It's part of the same conversation really around the planning time, the inclusion. I know that you have a proposal around middle school team time, so I think they're all part of the same conversation.
Yeah, we calculated about 165 Regents honors classes that this could be impacted. And are you proposing, our question, are you proposing that every teacher will get an additional release period to prepare for those classes? And then we could quantify what that would mean.
Are you looking at the number 5, different levels of the same content, such
Yeah.
as Regis
Yes.
versus honored?
Yeah.
Honors will be considered separate preps for preparation, release time, but not FTE purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have that piece in the contract now about the number of preps you teach and whether that gives you 1 prep period or 2 prep periods.
Yeah.
Then there's also the piece of like FTE. So for the purpose of salary, it is still 1 class. But for the purpose of preparation, recognizing that it takes significantly more time to prep a Regents honors level class than just a Regents level class or just an honors level class. So it's really looking at the prep.
So that's yes.
Yes.
And I guess we have questions about like have you looked at we've looked, I mean, we know there's 165 of those classes on the books right now. Obviously, some of them are, people teaching 2 or 3 sections, but
Right.
it would have a very significant impact on the number of prep periods.
Yeah.
And our staffing levels. So we're just curious if you all if that's something you've looked at further or.
No, but if you
Okay.
want to share your spreadsheet, we'd love to
Yeah,
see it.
those numbers could be up there. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, so we have,
In a way where we probably couldn't staff the high school.
that's our concern.
Yeah, and if you have a spreadsheet,
We just have the numbers right now.
Okay.
That's what but our questions were
Yeah.
if you'd looked into it yet, but we just have.
we just don't, that would
Yeah.
be very difficult information for us to pull because it would require us going through the like master schedule of every teacher
Right.
at the
Yep.
high school to figure
Yeah.
those out, so. Proposal 35 is enshrining the right to switch off, which basically says we recognize that sometimes work gets done outside of the contract day. Teachers. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use a microphone, Brian.
No, he was asking about the last proposal. Yes, we're open to it. Yep.
Enshrining the right to switch off. Recognizing that work sometimes needs to get done outside of the contract day. That teachers can choose to do their work outside of the contract day in whatever way they want, but that they cannot be held accountable for, say, answering an email that comes at Friday at 5 o'clock, and by Monday morning, if they haven't answered that email, they can't be disciplined for it because they were not working between the end of Friday and the beginning of Monday. Very
Well,
French.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in Chicago. Are the grievances associated with this, or we have a communication protocol in place? Can you give us instances of when it's not working? Like, I would want to know before we put this into contract language, why are we putting it in contract? Have we had major issues with an administrator requiring someone to pick up an email or someone doing something? And if there was, none of us had heard about this.
There's a lot of slippery work that happens outside of the contract day. This proposal really is intending to help establish an expectation of a work-life balance for everyone in
Yeah.
all respects, and hopefully pushing a little bit of using schedule send on emails rather than throwing them out there at 3 o'clock in the morning. And this
Gotcha.
is also for us, we've had a lot of internal conversations amongst ourselves about this also allows us to hold ourselves responsible colleague to colleague, not necessarily management to workers, but it just is to really establish we do school at school, and we do life at life.
No doubt. Yeah, I think we're all in agreement with all of that. And yes, we're open to some language that will make that make sense for people.
Yeah.
But being cognizant of the unintended consequences that anytime, every one of these proposals, everything in our contract has led to unintended consequences from my experiences here. And I'm just so fearful of what this one could do. That's all.
The protection piece on here is to protect from not working when you're not supposed to be working, being something that you can be disciplined for.
Yeah, no doubt. And wow, yeah. I would be embarrassed if it was some discipline. But I hope y'all recognize we have young people who have 24/7 needs.
Yeah.
and who are calling, and educators, administrators are having to respond to young people. And then sometimes these are life or death situations. So if we're codifying into language that no one's picking up the phone, that's a tough thing to sell. That's all.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room
Yeah.
to discuss. Proposal 36 is teacher workday at the end of marking periods. And this would really be kind of aligning some of those, either aligning PLC work, or we currently have professional days, a professional day. We've talked about 2 professional days, being able to line these up so that when that end of marking period time crunches in, it is very, very challenging to do the end of marking period grades and do a really mindful job of communicating with caregivers while also providing high quality instruction every single day, especially when all of that communication happens on multiple digital management systems. So just a little bit more time to give people breathing room.
Yeah, this will be a part of the overall discussion. We have some questions. Y'all want to put our questions on the table now, Zach?
I mean, I think our questions, and we have some counter proposals, our questions really come down to how do we structure professional development time? I know we've heard from the ITA folks, and you actually have proposals later on about, professional development time and how those needs are met. So it's the push and the pull of how do we meet those needs? We do hear the need for teachers to, have that professional time to handle their business items, but also we also hear the same group asking for professional time for professional development. So I think I think we're open to discuss it as part of a larger conversation about how do we meet all of those needs and how might we reconstruct some of our systems to do that.
Yeah.
So that would be the caveat.
Yeah, I think we're open to
Okay.
conversation in the same vein. Proposal 37 is looking at caregiver conferences and how how currently our elementary staff are finding that the time that they are currently provided to deliver caregiver conferences with an expectation of high quality conferences for every family is not quite sufficient for what they need.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, and then this is probably back to that conversation about the professional responsibilities that we've talked about previously. So sort of, does that land in the scope a couple times a year, or the scope of the normal duties, or is this extra?
Yeah.
And particularly when we're using the term overtime rate, that becomes a little bit, there's some question.
Proposal 38 is to clarify the report time for all teachers. We know that you have a counter proposal around report times. One of the things that we have noticed is that in defining what is the contract day, that's hard to do when the time that we start and the time that we end is not currently in the contract. That might be something we want to look at.
yeah, no, that's why we have questions too.
Okay. Proposals regarding clarification for non-traditional teaching assignments. So as we've been working through our collective bargaining agreement and really talking with all of our educators, it's become very clear that our collective bargaining agreement was written through the lens of a secondary period by period classroom teacher perspective. So we have a lot of teaching jobs covered under our contract that don't function under that system that become really gray, and we're looking to clear up some of those things. So that's what this whole section is about. We have a proposal for Wednesday meetings. We know that you have a proposal for Wednesday meetings. So I assume we're going to talk.
Yeah, we're going to talk about those. Yeah.
We do have some clarifying questions around other professional responsibilities. I think we understand the intent of what that means, but broadly applied, it has questions. So that's for number 6. So just some
For number 6.
under that, teachers who have other professional responsibilities.
They are athletic coaches.
Yeah, we were just thinking we should spell that out because yeah, great.
But yeah, our athletic coaches are like the first.
Understood.
people who topic. Proposal 40 is extending union status to athletic coaches, theater teachers, and other teaching professionals whose work is covered by the CBA. We're seeing more and more people who do not have full-time teaching jobs in the district taking some of these positions. So their work is covered under our contract, but they are not members of they are not currently, with the way that our membership is lined up, they're not eligible for membership in our union. So we just want to extend them the option to join the union since their work is already covered by the union.
We're open to this. Yeah, this was new to us in some ways. I didn't. If you have a number of how many folks that would be, just let us know.
I'd have to,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then would there be minimums, right? Like if
Yeah.
someone's, like what are the thresholds? Questions around that.
We do like prorated dues on, the portion that you work. Like if you're a
Got it.
part-time worker, we already prorate our dues for that. And that would be an internal piece that we would control.
So a person who comes and they coach one sport at a $5,000 stipend, your dues will come out of that stipend
If they choose.
If
to.
they
if they choose.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, right now.
Prorated.
Right now, we don't approach them because we
I
don't have a
got you.
mechanism
Makes
to
sense.
offer them the membership.
Thank
I
you.
thought that this is mainly athletic coaches. We couldn't.
We're also seeing it in theater.
Theater too.
Oh, right. Okay.
There may be other places, but mostly athletic coaches in theater.
Would it be like clubs? I guess we don't do clubs now.
We have some people come in.
If we have clubs that are not, we do have some clubs that basically if the work is covered under our collective bargaining agreement, we would like to be able to offer membership to the people doing the work. And in most cases,
You might already have that right.
I
but
think so
The
too.
work is yours. But we hear you and we're open to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Proposal 41 is to move the athletic coach and department leader evaluations from the collective bargaining agreement and into the APPR agreement, which we've already said, once we finish the CBA negotiations, then we'll start APPR renegotiation, which is a state change. And we felt that looking at that work and how we evaluate people for that work makes more sense when we're looking at how we evaluate all of our work.
I think you just answered the question we had, because we feel like this is premature, knowing that we need to go into negotiations about APPR.
Well, we're saying that this proposal is really, can we have the conversation? We know that there are, the athletic coach evaluation is out of date
Yeah.
to the current practices of athletic coaching. I've met with Ms. Little, and we've talked a number of times about how we want to update that evaluation.
Yeah.
There's a department leader evaluation in our collective bargaining
No.
agreement that hasn't been used in years. We'd also like to address that,
Yeah.
but we felt it would be more appropriate to address it in APPR negotiation. And we just want to move it over there.
So yes or no to
Yeah,
this?
makes
Yes.
sense.
All right,
Yep.
cool. Yeah. Yeah.
I just, yeah, it makes more sense if we're going to approach the APPR conversation to have this in mind from the outset,
Yeah.
rather than develop a system and then try to shoehorn something back in.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Did I hear our first yes? Like, yes.
Is that a yes to tentatively agree as written?
Oh, no, we're not agreeing to as written.
Yes,
what's his
we're
title
open.
again? He's the
Yes,
right
we're
hand up
open.
there? Transcriptionist. Yeah, no, bro.
Yeah.
Cheerleader.
Nice try.
But it says, and let's just make sure that we're not tentatively agreeing to a yes as written, because the functional change would be that coaches will be evaluated using the evaluation form in Appendix H until a new form is adopted via the APPR agreement. That's the only change.
Yeah, I don't think we want to make changes to current practice without having it memorialized in a new
Right.
contract. So no to like changing now. But yes, we're very open to negotiating some sort of new thing for coaches and others that we haven't mentioned.
Proposal 42 is to define the sports coaching season and provide paid time for pre-post-season games. So knowing that our coaches, our athletic coaches are paid by a stipend for a set of scheduled games. And if their team is very successful and they are very successful as coaches, their stipend does not increase, so they end up making less over.
Yeah, I feel like y'all wrote this one for a former coach, me. I love this. This is incentivizing winning and extending the season from the way I'm reading it.
Yes.
So
We're getting close to a yes, but
yeah, we're getting
open
very,
to-
I almost got you. You almost got one from me right there. You get a yeah, but on this one. But we would tighten up the number and some other things. Yeah.
Proposal 43 is to create an athletics compliance TOSA position permanently. Right now, we have a number of small pieces that have been put together into a TOSA position in the past. We would just like to say, hey, if we're already doing that, let's just do that.
I'm not open to it. There are very few instances where we have codified into contract language a position.
Yeah.
And other than ITA president.
Yeah.
And so this would be precedent setting and I don't want to go down this route. I feel like we've been very supportive of this
Yep.
role, but not to put it in language.
Proposal 44 is to clarify the responsibilities of TOSAs, and what it does is it just sets actually writing out like in this non-traditional teacher on special assignment position, what are you actually responsible for? What is the work that you are being contracted to do in this position? And how do we put some guardrails to make sure that those, since it's a lot of independent, asynchronous work, how do we put some guardrails on when that work expands beyond like 40 hours a week?
We were at a no, but hearing you say it so eloquently, I'm getting closer to tentative. Yeah, this one, I hope you recognize how this significantly impacts the purpose of a TOSA
Yeah.
and how it will be originated. And
Yeah.
in some ways, a future superintendent or a team may just say it would be too problematic and complex to even think about it because it takes away the flexibility that the role was intended to have.
Yeah.
But I would love to have more conversation about it so people would recognize how complex such a position is and why management administrators wouldn't want to be told how to use it.
Yeah.
If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, we're really just trying, again, that piece of work-life balance.
Yeah, I
When
got you.
when your work is significantly much less defined,
Yeah.
it falls, right now, it falls on the teacher to set boundaries.
I got you. Yeah, and I'm looking around the table and I haven't been here so long. I'm thinking about the number of folks who've gone through my district leadership class and who've become administrators who were teachers.
Yeah.
And many of them use a TOSA role to do their internship.
Yeah.
And had I said to them, or had they known they couldn't do administrative work in addition to the TOSA work or outside, like this would have made it problematic for both ends in the ways in which we just defined that role. So that's why I'm hesitant.
Proposal 45 is a seniority proposal for assigning overages. Currently, there's not a defined system for how overages get offered when they are needed. This would just kind of create a little bit, it would use seniority to create the order in which you ask, while also recognizing that certifications play in as well.
I think we have questions around like some of the circumstances, particularly with split departments and folks who work in different buildings, and it can get very complicated.
We have questions, but I'm going to say no. And that I recognize the ground rules dictate that you don't have to pull it from the table.
Yeah.
But this is a tough one. Overages go to people that administrators and other folks are choosing for a reason. And if it goes into seniority, that can create other issues
Understood.
for us.
Proposal 46 is getting into the work of department leaders, which I know that you have a proposal for the duties of department leaders, but also recognizes the fact that there is not currently a system-like department leaders at the elementary level.
Mm.
And this is a proposal that starts to establish some teacher leadership in the pre-K through 5
Oh,
unit, part of our unit.
yes, I missed some of that. Thank you for explaining it. We'd be open to it.
Yeah, and I think our questions would be along the lines of the at the elementary level, how you figure out how to split assignments and the impacts on that, particularly when we have multiple buildings. Again, just the complexities and the tracking
Yeah.
and the oversight questions.
Strategy position. The intent was actually to get at this, given the teacher leaders that we also have at the elementary level. So I would propose that continued conversation on that includes that current position as well.
Great. That's a wonderful idea, Mary. Proposal 47 is duty clarification for related service providers. So going back to that idea that right now it's pretty clear what a classroom teacher is supposed to do and pretty unclear what a related service provider is supposed to do. This just kind of outlines the job of a related service provider, knowing that there are various related service provider positions.
Yeah.
Open, yeah,
Yeah.
open to discussion.
And I see Jill laughing as a former related service provider. Proposal 48 is a job sharing revision. We currently have some language around job sharing. I am not really sure how often we're utilizing the formal job sharing language at this point, but taking a look at it to see if there are some revisions that might make it more accessible, might make it more useful, might make it more relevant.
We're open, yeah.
Okay. 49 is curriculum night expectations. So this would put the scheduling of curriculum night into a centralized district level, maybe as part of the academic calendar, rather than each building scheduling their own in an effort to avoid overlapping. And then it would, on the week of curriculum night, it would reduce other after, like, take out the Wednesday meeting on the week that you have curriculum night and make sure that your curriculum night doesn't line up with a grading period, just to kind of take that down a little bit.
We're open. This one could get complex, as you can imagine.
It is already.
It's already complex.
I
By
think that
design, yeah.
the scheduling could actually make
Yeah,
it
it
easier
could,
to have
yeah.
one person schedule it or one
That's true.
side schedule it. Proposal 50 is around the scheduling of teacher librarians. Most importantly, ensuring that every building maintain a teacher librarian, and then making sure that our librarians have time in their day to handle both the teaching needs and the management needs of a library.
I think this one, I mean, this exceeds some of the state recommendations. So we're always hesitant as related to a couple of the, and it's similar to the TOSA one where requiring positions. So we're probably open to having conversations about some factors related to librarians, but probably not the greater.
I'm not guaranteeing
Yeah.
positions, yeah.
Right, and the last section, which is also, if we have time, kind of where we'll go into more detail today. But proposals regarding enhancing and supporting union and district relations. So the way we all do business here and the way we've been kind of moving in the past couple years is very different than the way that union business has been done sometimes in the past. So really enhancing a more collaborative, accessible, easeful process is where kind of the big picture intent on a lot of these are. We are not interested in having adversarial relationships, and we think that there are some ways that we could make them potentially, a little bit smoother. Proposal 51 is to convert the CBA language and formatting for ease of use because our CBA is currently written with Roman numerals in a strange legalese that is often very hard to read. And our proposal is to change our Roman numerals to Arabic numerals, and as we redefine contract language to really keep ease of readability and common language in mind.
I love the middle school teacher. Yes, yeah. That is so cool.
Is that a tentative yes as written that we can do this, or do we need to discuss?
I
Well,
don't want to give him.
we're gonna discuss it
Yeah,
here today.
yeah, yes, yes.
I'm not as happy taking out the legal, but
It's where we need to have the legal is where we need to
No,
have the legal,
yeah,
but
we got you. We agree. Yeah.
I think they'll recognize that some of those low hanging problems that we hit is just because it's difficult to read the
Mhm.
contract as written.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, this could actually incentivize people to read their contracts instead of be like, I don't even want to open it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're here.
Proposal 52 is to enhance protections of teachers facing tenure denial, and this takes a practice that we've been using and just spells it out for folks.
We open, yeah.
There's some language we want to just
Yeah.
talk about, but we're in principle, we agree with
Great.
you.
Proposal 53 is a revision of the grievance procedure. It's more in line with recognizing the role that problem-solving meetings are already playing, and really seeks to avoid, to use collaborative problem-solving as a way to avoid formal grievance, but then simplifies the formal grievance procedure when things do go wrong.
Yeah, we like what you're doing. Yeah, we're open to finalizing the language.
Mm.
Great.
Good job, David.
That was well done.
Yeah, this is David.
There's a lot more.
That was well done. Like,
Proposal 54 is to bring in a progressive discipline protocol, so not taking away from the labor law related to major disciplinary infractions, keeping all of that intact, but for minor disciplinary infractions, having a more formal process for how we document and how we engage in those conversations.
another one well written. Yeah, we're open to finalizing.
Nice job, Jake.
That's from Chicago.
Oh,
She's taking back the compliment.
Right, Portland.
I hate to hear the comments.
I mean, in terms of also discussion outside, it looks like the just cause provisions that you have listed here would give additional sort of counseling memo level opportunities for change, right? And we might want to think about ramping it up. 3 counseling memos is probably a little much in terms of, but in principle, we'd like to talk more about this. It's just some things we want to be sure we are able to address.
Well, and keep in mind that it's for the minor stuff.
Right,
Right, when we get into the major stuff, we're still using the same.
right.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yep.
Proposal 55 is clarifying professional development expectations. And this is all stuff that we already do, just making it really, really clear to our members that like you have to go to superintendent's conference day.
yeah,
And then also the piece about making sure that we advertise any professional development that the district is offering for in-service only, making sure that people know it's in-service only before they sign up.
yeah, real cool, real tight now.
Proposal 56 is protections against AI and outsourcing
There
of
we go.
union work.
Yeah.
And it's building off of the language that we already have for transferring programs to BOCES. Just expands the list of what potential outsourcing and transferring of programs could enlist. And right now, it is that you are supposed to tell me in writing that you're doing this, whereas this proposal would be, we have a conversation. and come to that
Yeah.
together.
We're open to this conversation about it.
I think there are some questions about as AI develops, like where else this might apply as an unintended consequence.
Yeah.
So that's just being sure that we have language that articulates that.
Yeah, and this is a changing field. We recognize that there are ways that AI is going to make our lives, has the potential to make our lives as teachers easier. And then also looking at the Writers Guild in California, who were focusing on how do they protect the integrity of the professional human element of the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Proposal 57 is to provide teacher input in selection and development of new curricular programs. Our elementary teachers who got to engage in choosing new literacy programs this year really appreciated that opportunity, the thoughtfulness, the mindfulness, the collaboration that happened in there, and that we'd like to work on using that experience as a model for how do we make that more.
We're open to the conversation. Yeah, for sure.
There are probably questions as it relates to our professional development models and how we provide those trainings versus this, I think, has some proposals for timesheet work. We'd love to have a conversation about how that could work in a greater system that guarantees everyone gets it. Because I know we've heard from the ITA that when we sort of depend on the after hours timesheet model, it's not always equitable. So we'd love to talk in a greater conversation about our professional development efforts as it relates to this.
Yeah, professional development is very challenging. I was talking with the PTA council the other day about if we only did professional development during the contract day, students could potentially never come to school.
Yeah.
So recognizing that there's a push and pull. And that
Wow.
concludes the ITA proposals.
Well done. I wasn't going to ask the middle school teacher to go off of her agenda here, but we need a break.
Can we take a break
Yeah.
before we come back to
Can we come back precisely at 11:08? Is that enough time?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
yeah. We're gonna use the restroom like a passing.
Yeah. Like 3 minutes?
I forget, I'm talking to teachers. Administrators take a lot longer to go to the restroom, y'all.
Welcome center?
Yeah, you need to be in the hall.
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock is sounds great. Thank you.
Thank y'all. I think as we were taking a quick break, we were reflecting on how impressed we were with how much time, effort, and eloquent you were with your proposal. So just thank you. That was very well done. You even had us printing off Chicago and Portland's collective bargaining agreement. And we want you to know, with much respect, we spent an equal amount of time, a significant amount of time preparing our proposals as well. And we hope that you receive them in the ways in which we intend. And that's with the utmost respect and in a mutually beneficial way. Just to make sure everybody knows who's on our team here, because some folks have joined us. Dr. Jill Tripp is an observer who also serves on our Board of Education, and Dr. Sean Everett Bradwell. He's probably missing a class at IC right now to be here. So 2 folks who volunteer their efforts have spent a significant amount of time helping and supporting us both for many years. But so between myself and Bob Van Kuren and Zach Lynn, we're going to just try to run through efficiently what we're proposing to you all. Knowing that there's a significant amount of conversation to be had. And we'll start with salaries, because that's the first one. Faculty salary, article, a bunch of Roman numerals there, all right? And I've alluded to it previously, for every 1% of an increase to the ITA payroll, we're at approximately $400,000 for every 1%. As we think about our tax levy in our school district, a 1% increase to the tax levy is around $1 million. Our state aid increases with the governor's initial proposal for the first time is positive for us. But as you know, that one-time positivity oftentimes can be reversed. I mean, we've had many years since I've been here where state aid is flat or less than the previous year. In some years, I go back to gap elimination adjustment, where we were losing about $2.5 million a year. So it's hard to to do long-range fiscal planning based on state aid increases. But we do anticipate around $2.7 million if the proposal holds true. I'm just putting these numbers out there because I know y'all have done some calculations as well. And I want to make sure we're talking about the same types of numbers. So a 1% increase to the ITA payroll, $400,000, a 4% increase would be $1.6 million, et cetera. And we successfully negotiated tentative agreements with various other bargaining units, and those other bargaining units have settled at around a 4% increase. How we got there, and I know Bob, he stares right through me when I say this. I'm the worst negotiator when it comes to salary, probably ever as a superintendent, because I come in with the highest number that we've been authorized to share. And we did that with the other units. And I used to be challenged on that. And the other units don't typically challenge me much. They know that's the number I have. And I'm saying that to y'all with much honesty and consistently with the ways in which I've worked with you, and open, transparent, as referenced, by the way, we're transparently doing this right now. When crunching the numbers and thinking about our long-range approach to managing this school district budget, and without needing to go over the tax cap, I mean, for folks, this is the first time we've done this publicly. The last time we negotiated was behind closed doors. I think I can say this. When we talked about the salaries we were going to propose and when we settled on in that last collective bargaining agreement for 6 years, I said at the table, this will require this community to go over the tax cap one time, at least, and probably more likely twice, to avoid layoffs and cuts. Now, we went over the tax cap once and did not go over it the second time. And what happened? Layoffs and cuts. And those pay increases were around 4.5%, 5%, if I'm, because Kathy, I'm looking at you because there was only 3 people at the table at the time.
Yeah. Tammy was here too.
Tammy was here too. Yeah, Tammy. But those 4.5% increases at the time required us to go over the cap and to make significant reductions to programming and staffing. I'm operating in an environment where our community doesn't want any more cuts, does not want us to go over the cap, and wants us to give our educators the maximum increases possible. I'm being long-winded now just to paint the picture as clearly as I can. When I come in and say we have 4% and we're offering it up for 2 years because we can anticipate where the state is for this year and next, we can anticipate where our tax levy is, we understand where our fund balances are, how we're managing that, we understand our investment strategy. So when I say we have 4% this year and 4% monies next year, that is to keep things rolling. And that is to meet our vision, mission, and it's going to allow for us to give a significant pay raise, because there are many, I know a lot of folks are watching right now, 4% increase to payroll right now is significant from my perspective, in an era where many organizations in our community are laying off and are pay freezing or doing furloughs. So as a proposal, I hope you're open to this one.
We're obviously open to talking about salary.
Yes.
You answered one of our questions about like, how did you develop
Yes.
this proposal? And we just want to clarify that you are proposing a 2-year
2 year
agreement. We're open to discussion.
Thank you. I'm done, Bob. It's your turn. Let's transition to Bob to talk about the others.
Sure, and Zach and I are gonna sort of work together on this, and Mary, of course. Oh, and Dom, welcome, Dom. Dom has jumped in and gotten up to speed in a miraculous way,
30
really.
days yet, Tom?
No.
Okay.
Accentuate that.
Yeah, so thanks to everybody. I guess health insurance, we listed right after our 4% proposal, and you have a proposal as well. And so we want to chat about what it looks like, what's the monetary incentive, and importantly, and sort of like from a business perspective, less to do with, I think we all appreciate the empathy that we show both management and the union to our employees, our colleagues. One of the big things would be under what circumstances would people be able to opt back in? Because from an actuarial standpoint, opting out and typically what that means is the most healthy folks opt out. And what the district loses is that revenue from their what would otherwise be their participation, and we're self-insured. So some of that participation from those that are healthy is going to pay for those that are actually using the system. So we lose potentially a career-long worth of revenue. And then if they can opt in a year or two before retirement, also when they're more expensive, you can see the dynamics there. So we want to really hit that quite extensively, that type of discussion.
So we're open to discussing the two healthcare proposals, but we do have some questions and some requests for some information. So we would like to see the actual, like, detailed plan of what Medicare, like what the medical insurance is now and what other plans are being considered. Preferably before we come to the table to discuss those so that we have a chance to really do
Yeah.
homework on them. We are wondering whether in the piece of the open enrollment, have you considered and taken into account other open enrollment periods from other employers in the area, recognizing that there are a few big employers in our community and that many of our staff members may have access to health insurance or access to open enrollment periods from another one of those employers. So just making sure that anything about open enrollments allows people to actually make informed decisions in
Yeah.
timely manners. And then in terms of the opt-out, we would love to see some sort of projection of the impact of if people were to opt out, how would that affect the premium costs and expenditures for the people who stay in, recognizing that it's all hypothetical projection.
Okay.
Sounds good.
But we're open to it.
Yeah.
Substitute coverage?
Yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward. I think it's cleaning up expectations about what needs to be how we handle the actual like lesson plans and information that the teachers send in. One of the big feedback loops, I know when we did our fail to fill work last year, was just tightening up sub plans, everything from student, how can we properly pronounce student names? Not that that would have to be in the contract, but like just the more info the subs have, the better, which helps our continuity of services. So
Yeah. So we are open to discussing this. We are absolutely in support of systematizing, ensuring that when we are absent, our students have access to high quality instruction. We have many, many, many questions about this particular proposal that are all really in the action plan, in the implementation, and in the impact of the implementation. Some of the big things that came up for us are just really being clear and defining what is the expectation of a detailed lesson plan. I know that we joked about whether or not I gave you a rubric with the agenda, but like
Yeah.
we, that kind of work. Our elementary colleagues had some real concern over moving to curriculum that is very digitally based, but then having substitutes who either don't have the access or the appropriate training to be able to deliver that curriculum. People like Callie over here in the art department and her colleagues in the tech department, there are legal reasons that their substitute plans in their subject area may have to look different than if they were there as a certified teacher. How do we ensure that they're doing that? So we just have many, many, many questions about this. But I think that there's room for discussion on it, and we agree that we should be writing solid lesson plans.
and then the next one is just I think is almost technical cleanup. You and I have talked about this, but for those the veteran amongst us used to be a call-in service with someone would call you. Now it's digital, so just making sure that we are cleaning some
We are in total agreement that we should be using the online reporting system to report absences. We can agree to this as written. I'm wondering what telephone
Wait, can
number
we
and
call,
when.
did you say you're gonna agree to it as written? Don't say that.
I just want us to clarify, when would we be using a telephone?
As a backup, perhaps,
Okay.
no.
You get that number.
No, no, well, okay, so this is where it gets.
Zach's number.
Yeah, it's my personal
Personal
number. No.
phone.
Sometimes, late, if the online systems will close at a certain time, so actually you would be calling the school usually at a different time. Like if you're not
Yeah.
going to be able to report in this emergency after 7:30 to elementary, you'd probably call the school, because if you put it into our system ASAP, it's not going to work. So I think and we can clean up that language too.
Yeah, I think for contractual purposes, we can agree to this as written. We may just need to do like a clarifier communication of how to report absences as a education piece.
Very good. So teaching hours, teaching load, teacher workday, Article 11A1 would, again, just, it pretty much speaks for itself in terms of the intent and the language. And
We're open to discussing this, but only if we're discussing it in alignment with our proposal around professional duties and our proposal around the right to switch off. Recognizing that if work extends outside of the contract day, having some protections on being able to say, when do we get to have a life?
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds perfect. Wanna take this one?
Okay, so for this next proposal, I know we had talked about the start times and end times. This actually does provide some of that, but it is looking to increase the day at our elementary and secondary levels. So in this case, we're looking at 30 more instructional minutes at the elementary level and 15 minutes at the secondary level. That's what we're looking for.
So our question, and this is actually a right now question, is there a salary adjustment being offered along with this proposal? Because when we look at just 30 minutes a day for 187 days is an extra 15.5 days of the year. So we're just wondering if there's also supposed to be some extra salary adjustment that would happen before any other salary adjustment.
We're open to the conversation.
Then we are open to continuing.
Yeah.
the conversation.
This next proposal, teaching hours, teaching load, parent teacher meetings. This is seeking, there's two intents. One is just to update the terminology. We recognize that parent teacher conferences can be an outdated term. A lot of times we have caregivers in our community that don't fall into that classification. So we'd like to update our language to reflect that. And then this teacher caregiver, the second intent is to sort of provide clarity about when and how these meetings can take place, but also recognize that for an essential part of the teaching profession is that communication between caregivers and teachers, and that those things often can and do, as part of the profession, occur beyond the school day. And so just trying to clarify that. But yeah.
Yeah. Because you kept in the piece of meetings will be arranged at a mutually convenient time, we are fine with this as written.
Sure. Both pieces.
Yeah.
Okay.
You find it as written?
Yeah.
I didn't,
Yes. Yes.
I
we're
didn't-
fine with
I
this as written.
legitimately didn't hear. I wasn't. And department leaders, you have proposal too. We obviously will talk about that as in combination with yours and.
Yeah, and these two, we were thinking that might actually be better to hold these off. If we APPR conversation, then we'd want to address these topics in the APPR conversation as well. Part of the thing that we were struggling with was determining how much time you need to do a job when you haven't defined what the job is
Right.
difficult. So
We have some
doing,
work to do there.
yeah, doing the definition of the work, how much time you need to do the work and how you evaluate the work all together seemed to make more sense to us.
Cool.
So this next one, faculty and professional learning communities, we have our, so this is a proposal to restructure our Wednesday meeting process. We've been using, we've had the PLC project process, and then our building administrators also leading on Wednesdays, alternating. In this case, we're looking to have the, usually the building or department leader, administrator in charge, set the agenda and run those meetings for those Wednesdays. That's what our proposal is.
Can we talk about the two together?
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
So we also have a Wednesday meeting proposal, so clearly we're going to talk about Wednesday meetings. Our first real question is on both of these. What problem or what like challenge is this proposal actually trying to address?
Yeah, I can speak to this, and Mary may also as well. One of the leading issues we're trying to tackle is how do we do coordinated professional development to provide it for teachers? When we have 2 opportunities a month at 1 hour, but it's less than 1 hour because we're, folks are coming in and out, and there's different reasons. It limits our ability to do a lot of systemic work either at grade levels or with curriculum, because you're really, a lot of times they're operational. So what we're looking to do is give more flexibility on the administrative and leadership side to implement professional development plans over time.
So in terms of faculty meetings, we have some questions. How are we ensuring that all staff have input into the agenda formation of those meetings, and making sure that right now at some of our schools, that's communication that happens exclusively with department leaders, which doesn't always, especially when there's not a scheduled department meeting and everybody's on different schedules, it makes it hard to make sure that everybody's voices are being heard there. So we would want to talk about how are we creating those agendas to make sure that they meet the needs of everybody. How are we ensuring differentiation for staff at these meetings? Earlier today, Callie was saying that go ahead, go, speak for yourself.
Years ago, there was an entire staff meeting about visual literacy within the classroom, and that's literally my entire job. So I would say I did not gain a lot of knowledge or extra things to add to my pile, where I sat there and instead of being a part of that and helping with it, I was just kind of there as a member.
Yeah, so making sure that that time is actually relevant to every member of the faculty is a real challenge, especially with that many of them. And then on the other hand, recognizing that in order to do all these faculty meetings would be taking away from PLC meetings, because that would be the trade-off. And especially in our elementary school where we have teachers, special education teachers teaching on multiple grade levels, that PLC time is for many of them the only time that they have to co-plan and collaborate with their co-teachers. So if there were not PLC meetings, where would the time for that adult to adult collaboration be built into the work that we do? We had a question of whether keeping the 5th Wednesday as a PLC meeting, if we're still continuing to use the vision that PLCs were originally intended for, which is like an ongoing, continuous professional experience, whether just doing them twice a year or sometimes 3 times a year is in keeping with that vision. Wondering how this proposal connects to the vision of district-wide PLCs, or are we, it sounds like maybe we're saying that targeted professional development may actually be a more effective way to give our people what they need than the self-directed nature that PLCs afford, is kind of what I'm picking up on.
I think this is beautiful. After we settle on salary, which will be the next session, then we can get I envision us really having a deep conversation about how we structure opportunities for professional development and PLC work. And we come up with a new plan. The plan we have in place goes back 15 years now. And we've evolved. And so has the nature of PLC work evolved. So yeah, I envision this being an entire session and us coming up with something we think will work.
Yeah, for us right now, we would really struggle to make a fully inclusive model work without the PLC time unless we had a different place and way that we were doing that.
And Marion, we want more opportunities and input into the PLCs time.
Yeah.
And you want more opportunities and input into the staff meeting, faculty meeting time. So that it could be mutually beneficial.
Yeah, I think there's room for mutual benefit. here. And I'm happy to hear that we're open to completely re-envisioning.
Yeah.
That takes us to personal injury benefits, absence due to injury on the job. And we wanted a chance to discuss the current 3-year period for workers' compensation. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened in the last 15 years, multiple times that I can remember. When it does happen, it really has some implications for hiring because that position is being held. We can't hire someone probationary for that position. And we'd like just an opportunity to talk about reducing that from 3 to 1 years to 1 year. Recognizing that if it extends past that, the teacher has sick time they can utilize as well.
Okay, I now understand where this is coming from a little bit more.
Yeah.
We would love to see data that supports this proposal. Like we are not sure how big a problem this actually is just because we don't have the longevity of knowing how big a problem it actually is. We also have a counter proposal that has to do with workers' compensation. We have some questions related to legality of workers' compensation that we would need to talk to. At the way that this was written, we're not particularly interested in reducing the amount of time. I do think that there might be some conversation that we could have around the hiring piece. Hearing that that is one of the major concerns, we might be able to find some middle ground there.
The teaching periods of preparation time in middle and secondary schools. Just a modification for team planning. I know we've had a lot of conversations. It's really just our effort to start a conversation about how can we do this in a way when we're really trying to staff everything as best we can, but we want to make sure that folks have all the time they need, but then also we don't want to be overly restrictive. So it's really our attempt to start that conversation.
And I think that this, as it's written in the structure of the day that we currently have, without opening up the entire conversation, but it sounds like we are going to open up the entire conversation. At first glance, we were not really interested because for our middle school educators, that team structure is really fundamental to the work that they do. But as we talk about how do we support our students while supporting our educators, give adults more time to collaborate, use those meetings, there may be a piece of this conversation that could come through. But we are very concerned that losing the team structure would be a detriment to middle school students. So we really want to know from your side what you see the benefit to students being in doing this. So that's a probably not interested, but it'll probably come up anyway.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Repayment of sick leave bank usage is an opportunity to really strengthen what I think both parties see as a valuable benefit for members. And it would, the numbers we can talk about, we can make the trajectory higher, steeper or less so, but just a mechanism to start having folks that have used the sick leave bank when they can start to pay some of that back. And it might be, there's a number of cases I'm sure that we all have in mind where they'll never repay it all back, but at least we can, get a little bit back and strengthen the bank.
We are not interested in this one at this time. We really feel that we are donating our own benefit days to this bank. And we should be able to control how we manage the use of our own benefit days for that. And we're not particularly interested in having our own members pay them back. Did you want to talk about other districts?
Yeah, I found this particular proposal interesting as I continue through negotiating contracts since the season. I'm seeing districts that actually want to back away from this due to having to chase people down if they leave or sending bills and trying to recoup payments. It becomes really, it doesn't make them feel good.
Yeah.
To go after someone who has been sick or injured and left for whatever reason. And they're usually not successful.
Yeah. And just to be
And-
clear, we're not proposing that either. Yeah.
Okay, well, repayment of the sick bank, if they didn't have anything to repay and then they left, what would that mean? I think
Not-
that's the
nothing.
way I read it. So.
Yeah, nothing. It would be, we would lose.
So they would only repay if they remain.
Yeah, we're thinking once they've recovered, once they've built up some time in their own personal leave accruals, that we could start to pull a little bit out and push it back into the bank for others to use. But we hear your trepidation. Yeah.
And then this last one here is just sort of, and again, open to discussion, but just sort of updating our preamble to clarify what professional duties of a teacher are and sort of the different domains where those could live. But really, we want to hold the importance of teaching as a profession and the positive impact that our teachers have on the success of our students. So it's just really trying to clarify that. But also sort of get at the conversation around, and that's kind of the heart of our negotiations but like, what are the things that every teacher can be doing, understanding that teachers want to have a good work-life balance, but also understanding that, hey, sometimes things happen and just trying to provide some general themes for for how we want to talk about teaching as a profession.
Yeah, and we're open to discussing that as part of the other proposals that are on the team. Same topic. Okay.
That time.
It is 11:30, which gives us a bunch of time. So I put on our agenda an identification of any missed topics in need of proposals at this point.
We didn't have any.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, sure.
We don't have any either. Okay, do we? Not that I'm aware of. Okay, yeah, not that we're aware of. In the agendas moving forward, I did suggest that we have new proposals, counter proposals, withdrawals as kind of the first place we start next time we come in. So if anybody identifies anything between now and then, there's room to do that. But yeah, our goal for the rest of the day is to jump into those priority 6 union and district relations, get into the weeds on some stuff. And I'm open to Proposal 51, converting the CBA language and formatting. Did we agree to that as written and to just do it?
Look at that again.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, well then,
Yeah.
proposal 51, yay, it's a yes.
Okay.
First agreement.
First agreement. Whoops.
So we can go in order or we can talk about specific ones. I'm open to however you want to do that.
Let's go. I would prefer going in order because I'm gonna lose track. All right, cool.
Okay, so enhancing the protections of teachers facing tenure denial. Bob, you said you had a couple of things you wanted to clear up language wise.
Yeah, I think we just want to be sure that, well, first of all, we agree that the intent here is really good. You and I know of some cases where the notification came late, and we want to try to avoid that. But we also want to be sure we have language in, because sometimes the lateness of the notification is because we have recently figure something out.
Yep.
And so we want language that if it didn't happen by October 15th, it would simply move the 80 days of pay into,
If it didn't happen by March 1st. October 15th is just
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yep.
notifying
This is
all probationary
March
teachers
1st.
of their tenure date.
Right. By March 1st. Thank you so much.
Yep.
If it didn't happen by March 1st, it would simply mean that we would pay into the summer, that 80 days would extend out.
Yeah, and so I wrote this as the remaining days. Should those 80 days exceed the current school year's payroll? So if it's after that, the remaining days will be paid as a lump sum no later than August 20th, thus ending the teacher's official employment in the position.
And that would, we would pull, so if they're on health insurance, for example, that would come out of that lump sum payment to carry
Yeah.
them.
We would
through
carry them through to August 31st.
Right, September 1st, yeah.
Well, no, August 31st, because if they do
Right,
September
got you, yeah.
1st, then they stay on September. Sean, would this work in terms of summer personnel reports? Would this timeline work?
That'd be something you have to take a look at depending on the time. The board has been in conversation about trying to do something more in July.
Okay.
So there's a possibility, but as you know, it's usually been the reorg meeting and then not another meeting until August, the first weekend or the first week in August. But that's something the board's been trying to see if we can't do something different. So there would be a possibility, I think.
Okay.
If you're asking the board, I don't know about our administrators. But
You know, I'm asking the board if this would work in terms of the work that you do, because my intent here is to anyone who finds themselves in this position to have all of the pieces wrapped and tied in a nice bow before the first day of the new school year, so that there's no lack of clarity of whether or not the relationship has ended before the next school year starts.
Mhm.
we would work with Dr. Brown and the team and you all to make that happen, whatever's the best interest of our.
I think maybe we should discuss a little bit, maybe a committee offline a little bit in terms of the language that we would ultimately put in here, because I think both sides, having done this many, many times per year, recognize that a teacher, especially a newer teacher that doesn't have a lot of experience, may not be what we want to have, continue to employ in this district, but they could have a very good career as they move forward. So we want to present people with the opportunity to understand that it's not working here, and here are the reasons why, and allow them to be in a position to find other employment and be able to say legitimately that they didn't resign because they were denied tenure. Right, so the language will have to be carefully written. And it's probably something that's best done, by committee and then re-present here.
Catherine, did you get this language from another collective bargaining agreement, or did you all sit and think through it?
I don't think I got it from another collective bargaining agreement. I think I got it from the experiences we've had in the past
gotcha.
5 years.
Yeah, we're on chart. I think, how can we say, yes, we agree to this one, but we
agree
would have
in
to.
principle.
ten- Yeah, conceptually, we just got to tighten the language up. And yeah,
We'll figure out some language.
There's all those cases we were talking about, right? We're agreeing, but we have more.
yeah.
Yes.
You said earlier about.
Yeah.
There are some, like the October 15th, there's an October 15th. The district will notify all probationary teachers. Currently, when a teacher's hired, they get their
Yeah.
probationary date. Are you saying, you're asking the district to?
I would say I get an average of 2 to 3 emails a week from newer teachers saying, when am I supposed to get tenure?
Okay, so.
So there's,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if we had probationary periods in your WinCap profile, that might be a way to do this. But also for me, notifying the teacher and also the building leader puts everybody on the same page of hey, just so you know, this person's tenure date is coming up. Giving
So-
the reminders is a good way to avoid potential like tenure by estoppel.
Agreed. The reason I'm asking is sometimes things change. For example, in both directions. If we get notified that someone has prior tenure, but they didn't, like it was never made known to us previously, all of a sudden that date is going to change, move forward for them, right? And then other circumstances, when someone either goes on leave, depending on the type of leave and the length of the leave, it also changes. So I think there's, again, with language around there to make it clear that it's not always going to be exactly that day because circumstances can change. So it's not like
This is
until
your
they're
minute dates.
exactly,
Yeah.
because until someone's actually tenured, it's actually, they're not tenured. So we don't know. And additional, yes.
This is saying that the district will notify all probationary teachers scheduled for tenure review in the next 12 months and their building leaders of their upcoming, we could say upcoming tentative tenure.
Yeah,
review
I
date.
just want to make it clear that those things are subject to change. So
Yeah,
as long as-
most of and I mean, those changes get communicated via the board report.
yeah,
And in the past year, we have started an internal practice that our member services chair personally reaches out to every one of our ITA people who are on a board report to just say, hey, there was a change to your position on the board report last night with a link to the board report. So I think that we're already doing a lot of that communication. I just think
Yeah.
it wouldn't hurt each year to send out these are the people who are.
we're happy to do that. And in fact, we already have built some internal systems and capacities to notify administrators of the different folks that are scheduled. We have a whole board in our HR office dedicated to folks and dates. So
Yeah.
we can definitely, it's
You're doing
doable.
a
I just,
wonderful job.
yeah, my whole point is that it's just making it clear in the contract that, because a lot of folks go to the contract first, that these things shift and change. So make sure everyone's clear.
Do you need more than it just to say tentative there?
I don't think so. No.
And then, Bob, do you want to work on the 25F language more and maybe bring a revised version back
Yeah.
next time we meet?
Next session.
That'd be fine. Yep.
Okay. But we can tell our members today that we have tentatively agreed to this.
Yeah,
Okay, great. I just don't want to say something that's not true.
yeah, no, that's cool.
Okay, revision to the grievance procedure. I'm gonna let David be the lead on this.
Yeah, David.
All right, so this does a couple of things. First off, there's a lot of language here that hasn't shifted dramatically. It's just become, I've shifted language for readability. So when we looked at that earlier proposal about language for readability, this is a model of what that might look like, shifting again, just something. So if you're a member and you feel your rights have been violated, you should understand the process by which you can grieve that. So that was the first thing that you're seeing for a lot of this. The big changes come in bifurcating the grievance process into an informal process and then a formal process. As our grievance process stands right now, members can present a grievance to us, and it is a railroad. It is a direct line from step 1 through 5 with no real ability to have discussion and have recursive discussion across various levels of management, right? We would like the opportunity to be able to engage in more discussion as long as both sides feel that the discussion is fruitful, right? I'd like a member to be able to talk to their building leader, for them to come to us, for us to go to Zach, for Zach to go, hey, we're gonna go back to the building leader again, right? And to engage in the cyclical process of informal grievance resolution. If that breaks down, either side feels there's not progress to be made, then we can initiate the formal process, which is in line with what previously was stated, with the big exception that the ITA has more guardrails to say, look, I understand, member, you have presented this to us. This we do not feel is a grievance that is pursuable. And to say no, because as it stands in the process that we currently have, it isn't until we have appealed to you, Dr. Brown, that we have the opportunity to say, we do not see this going further, right? And that has led to some places where we have pushed toward formal grievances that were not really meritorious, but because of the system that we had, we were compelled to move forward. Right? We would like to make sure that if things are entering the formal grievance, that they have weight behind them. So that's what this gets to. And there's a lot of very formal language and sub bullets and things that are all citable, but that's the essence of the process.
Bob, go
Good.
ahead.
And yeah, and let's maybe just kind of roll through some of the language.
Yeah.
I'll figure this out. Definitions, agreements is claimed by any member of the CBA, and the language is just a little, so by any member represented by the ITA, right, is what we're
Sure.
saying.
Yeah.
Okay. And the association reserves the right to pursue alleged violations of New York state law directly through arbitration rather than engage in the grievance process. Currently, under the CBA, it goes directly to arbitration if there's an alleged violation of law. Question in terms of one bite of the apple or two, is it like the arbitration process could happen and then or excuse me, the grievance process could happen and an outcome and then it goes to arbitration, or just want to be clear on that one.
Let's see, hold on. So a lot of these early bits, definitions, element, these were not shifted other than to plain language. Them.
All right, so yeah, claim violation of law would go directly to arbitration as the current language. This seems to give reserves the right to pursue.
This, my reading of this, David, correct me if I'm wrong, is it used to say that we will just go to arbitration, and now we're saying we get to choose whether to engage in the grievance process or go to arbitration. That we reserve that right to choose.
Right, and as the grievance process ends locally, if there's still disagreement between management and union, it could go to arbitration.
That would be using if the formal
So-
grievance process were to take us
Right.
to this final stage of binding arbitration.
Okay,
But there's so many ways to solve that problem before we get there.
yeah,
And
Right.
this actually creates more collaborative ways to solve a problem before we get there.
just number 4, group party, again, means any person or group of persons in the negotiation unit. It really is because of Janice, it should read something along the lines of represented by
Represented by.
Sure.
the negotiation. And maybe this is a question for Tammy in terms of Janice. I feel like a grievance process unrelated to discipline, just help me understand with Janice, if someone is not a member of the unit, the NICET has indicated less representation will be provided. So if the grievance were related to a disciplinary issue, yeah, you don't need to answer right now because I know it's a tough question. But
We
something to
don't
think
get
about.
me or NICET, we believe that the local unit would still have an obligation.
Okay.
And then they would use their internal process to.
Got you.
let it move forward.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. All right.
I have a question about this. Some CBAs have a grievance form as an appendix to their bargaining agreement. Is that something that we all feel would be helpful, or? I mean, I have.
I hate to say a form could be helpful, but
No,
yes.
I
a
have,
form
I
could be
have a
helpful.
lovely template that, that really gets at C1, A through F.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
we have a
have the
form we
form.
use.
Yeah.
Um,
which means we'd want to update the language to reference the form as an appendix.
which is right. So, and I'm open for any of these, like clean up the language, of course, right?
Yeah.
But
I think we're happy if you create a form that follows your contract and you want to maintain that form, that's be happy to accept that.
One of
form.
my special skills.
Yeah, I don't, for clarity, I'm thinking we've digitized a lot of forms and put them into our systems. I don't know that we are interested in creating like a let's talk grievance form at this point.
No.
no,
No,
We're
I know,
gonna-
but that's often the iteration, a couple iterations down. So, but if you all had your own form that you used and like the association will maintain a form that does this and
Yeah.
Fine.
I think it would be really helpful for people to be able to look at a grievance and have it look the same every time you see it, to know where to look for, like, to know how far to skim down to, okay, what do they actually want?
I agree. And furthermore, to make it, because you and I in our conversations, it's also often like, what's the actual provision or element of the CPA that we're discussing? Because sometimes, with all due respect, sometimes it's things that maybe aren't like someone doesn't feel good about something, but it may be beyond what's covered in the CPA, at which point it's a different type of conversation.
right. But as our current state process stands, we still have to take that to
Right.
you. We
Yeah.
don't get to say no.
Yeah,
that
been
not
there,
an-
yeah.
Right,
Understood.
right. People can have feelings and feel like, and as it stands, I have to go to Dr. Brown and said, someone has feelings.
You know how that plays.
Right. And like, and I don't want to downplay that for
Of
folks
course.
by all means, feelings are valid, but this process is for violations of written provision, right?
Facts.
Yeah, I think just to go a little bit into it, when asking for redress, I don't know how we say like reasonable redress or, just seeking redress that makes sense. I don't know if we have to put that in language but one of what you're requesting under F is the redress sought by the aggrieved party. So I don't know if we need to modify that, but
That is part of the current process
yeah,
too.
yeah, no, I get that. What I'm saying is like,
I-
when we talk about redress, being clear about what redress might look
So,
like or.
To which end I would say that's part of what our job
Okay,
should be when
cool.
we are taking this from the member and having our initial conversations and saying, okay, what do you see makes you whole? And is that a reasonable ask? Or
Great.
how do we modify your ask so that it is reasonable?
Trust us that we will like make sure it's not a ridiculous request.
Our interest is to make the best use of everyone's time in this process and to
Agreed.
honor everyone's time in the process. And so what we can do in advance before it's going through this, or what we can solve at the lowest level possible is our goal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we agree with that goal. Absolutely. It's number 4, and I appreciate that a lot of the language is very, very similar or even unchanged, but given that we're talking about a negotiation, might offer an opportunity just for clarification or minor changes too. So number 4 is the Board of Ed and Association agree to facilitate any investigation which may be required and to make available any and all material and relevant documents, communications, and records concerning the alleged grievance. That is the language that's currently in there. As I'm reading it, and I don't believe it's come up, but it could.
Can you hold on one second?
For those at home, we had an announcement from the. Both sides may have created documents or communications about the grievance that they want to keep within their group, right? And so I'm wondering if a little language, unless exempt under confidentiality rules or in preparation for the grievance. Like you may have some documents relevant to the grievance saying that this grievance is really weak, but they're relevant, and I wouldn't expect you to turn those over to the district, and we might have similar communications between us that we wouldn't want to necessarily turn over to the union, even though they're relevant and related. And there may be some documents, especially if young people are involved, that could be
Right.
protected from FERPA. And so, just some language, don't have to necessarily settle on it today, that covers that type of situation.
Sure. Is that something that you could,
Yeah,
you would be willing to
absolutely.
help kind of
Yeah,
do a
we're
little
happy to
clean, a
do-
little
yep.
draft, and we can, like the other one, come back and look at some
Yeah,
cleanups there?
sure thing. And number 5, it looks like the only change in number 5 is we'll have access to, the aggrieved and all parties of interest will have access to all notes taken. It currently is copy of
Minutes?
minutes of the proceedings, and I do appreciate de-legalizing documents, but this one might be too much because there could be notes taken at the table that wouldn't want to be necessary.
Sure. I think my goal there was
Yeah.
minutes is a very, minutes creates a very specific expectation.
Yeah,
Right? And I'm happy for, like, we do committee meetings when we do these and have notes from the committees, but they are not minute in the sense that we understand minutes to mean. So my ask then would be, where's that middle ground we can find with, yes, right, those internal notes, I can see we want to hold those back, but if I'm having a committee meeting on a grievance, the person who's filing the grievance should have access to those
Mhm.
committee notes.
yeah. I have some verbiage that I haven't quite figured out in my head, so I'll hold it, but
But you,
I
right,
hear
you can
you.
see where we're like.
I appreciate it. I agree with you, and I'm sure we can come up with the
Because, right,
language.
and,
Yeah.
and we can talk.
Yeah, so
Off camera,
any,
recent experiences. where
yeah,
Someone was upset that I didn't provide
yeah,
minutes.
right. No, I hear you. So any notes, documentation, which will be utilized as an official part of the grievance, maybe,
Sure,
right?
right,
My notes and what I need to capture to help me understand it at a later time wouldn't be something we would share, but
and I agree I
Okay.
agree with that, absolutely.
all right.
So is someone who's going to work on the change to the language?
I'll,
Okay.
we can collaborate.
You'll
We can
collaborate.
we can
Okay.
touch base, that would be
All
great.
right.
Bob, I just have a question on number 4. When you were talking about maybe not keeping up everything, we're talking outside of the Taylor law requirements in order.
Right,
to-
right.
to
Taylor law
im-
required, yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
implement
yeah,
that.
absolutely. Maybe we could reference that even. Okay. Thank you.
I love referencing a law in the.
Right. The next one that I had was number 9. I won't read it off because it's very long, but the last sentence of it is, however, it would not be considered a public record. And I got to thinking that I'm not sure necessarily that if we got a foil that we could say we wouldn't, I mean, we could redact a lot of it, probably names and identifiers, but I'm not sure we could necessarily withhold it under foil. So I just wanted an opportunity to place that on the record and maybe we can figure out some language.
That was another one where I pulled it right from the
Yeah.
existing language, right?
Yeah, yeah. So this language has worked well and it probably will work well, but ultimately if we can do it now and make it
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
better, that's great.
Fix it.
So yeah, the next one is 10. The existence of this process does not mean that the person with an alleged grievance has to use it. They still have the right to seek other ways to resolve the issue. And using this procedure will not limit or prevent them pursuing other options at any point. And I'm just wondering if there's could be, I don't want to go to legalese, but there's such thing as forum shopping when you're trying to get the decision you want. So if there's a grievance and they settle it through some method other than the grievance procedure, are they precluded from bringing that same grievance if something else changes? Are there mechanisms to help both the union and the district understand what's happening, perhaps at a low level that neither the union nor the district would be in agreement with? And so maybe, again, just to have the opportunity to maybe collaborate on how do both union and management understand and agree to things that are happening at the low level.
Sure.
We want them to finalize at the low level too, but ultimately there could be things happening that neither of us want to see more broad-based.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, that's just more language preserved that I
Yeah.
think can be
Yeah.
discussed.
This also has me thinking about number 10 to me is also opening up to, I've filed a grievance. I don't like the outcome of the grievance, so I'm going to keep grinding this axe in other ways, which is not really the intent that I think anyone would want. So maybe we can
Yeah,
work that in there.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we've been really, both sides have been able to work out grievances at a very informal level, even if it's at, a higher union level and at central office, helping people
Right.
reach agreement. Yeah. So that's something we want to preserve. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's the goal here is to formalize that informal process.
So number two, what stage we at? Stage one.
Stage one.
Number two,
Yep.
A, whenever possible, the aggrieved will be invited to be present while their grievance is being discussed. I appreciate that it's current language. I'm wondering, there's so many good conversations that happen between union presidents and central office personnel trying to really collaborate to settle something. And some things can be said between those two groups that, right? So if we're telling folks in the contract, and we want them to know their contract better, if they're like, you can't discuss this without me, and I'll be there at 4 o'clock to listen, it could have a chilling effect on some good conversations that helped us in the past reach a resolution.
For us, transparency with our membership is really important. What we've kind of taken an approach of in the conversations that we're having with members who are considering whether or not whatever they've experienced is worth a grievance. We'll often ask, what would it take to make you feel whole? What are you trying to get out of this? And then also, do you want to be part of the conversation to be able to tell your story, or would you like us to negotiate this on your behalf? And I would say the majority of times people are like, please just take care of this for me.
All right, fair enough.
And I do think that people should have access to the conversation about how their problem, like it's their problem. So to say that it would be hard to restrict them from being part of the conversation about solving their problem.
Yeah. I got you. It would just be,
Sorry.
our
No, I
conversations
agree.
would have to be more nuanced,
I mean,
which is fine.
the way that you have a conversation changes the way that you have a conversation in all circumstances.
Yeah.
So
Fine. I appreciate that.
We have great hopes coming from this.
Within 60 school days?
Yeah.
Do we feel like there's an opportunity to maybe shorten that? Again, it's not a problem until it's a problem, and I haven't, in terms of data, there might be one or two occasions a year where it's like, it would have been helpful to know this a lot sooner, right? So I'm just wondering, 60 school days is potentially a long,
It-
3 months. Yeah.
And you're right, that is a long time, but there are times when folks don't know that they've had something that they are aggrieved until they know. Right? You don't know what you don't know until you know, you're right. So I don't want to,
Another great quote.
Right.
That's another.
but it's true. And I would feel remiss to cut off any sort of recourse for folks that found out something was a miss and they missed their window. So yes, 60 school days is a long time, but for that aggrieved member, it isn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Well, and this is the in-for, this is the,
It could.
this is in for, right? Right, this is, you have to let us know within 60 school days that there was a problem to start this, get this going.
Yeah, no,
Just one clarifying piece with this is understood. A challenge does occur, like if we're saying school days, well, sometimes you would then run into the next year. So I wonder if we could.
There is a piece about, if it is at the end of the year.
okay, then I
we
missed that.
Advance
Okay.
the
Right.
timeline to
but that,
resolve it.
but that, I mean,
One of,
we were gonna also
Oh.
talk about that to compress it. And compress all of the timelines that normally would be associated with the grievance, including, we have a informal hearing, we have. I don't have it in front of me right here, 5 days to respond, to compress that down, to try to get it done before the end of the year is something that we probably should start to figure out how to work around. Be thinking about like the 60 days. There's some language in other contracts that says 60 days or whatever, X amount of days from the time the employee knew or should have known. Now, I know that opens up some other gray areas, but what we want to try to avoid is an employee sitting on a grievance, stewing about it, maybe getting aggravated about it, having, and then we lose an opportunity to get in and
Well,
collaborate quicker.
and that, right, that makes sense. I would like to have time to talk to Tammy about that
Oh,
one,
yeah,
though,
sure.
before,
Yeah,
before we really talk, before we go too much further, right?
Yeah.
We have our specialists for reasons. and
Even though I think we're going through language today and we might agree at the table in principle, yeah, each side will have time to go through and create language and pass
Right,
it back and
yeah,
forth. Yeah, absolutely. Remind me, I might have missed the conversation with the union. Is the union hoping to seek an earlier time where the union says this is our grievance now and we've decided we want to move forward, or we decided we're done? How is that different from what it currently is?
Just restate that question then.
At some point in a grievance process, like the union does its work and it supports their member.
Sure.
But at some point, the union can say to the member, look, we've supported you this far. We never thought the grievance was very strong. The district is not moving on it and we don't wish to expend further
Sure.
effort on it. We're
So at our current, as currently written, the first time we can exercise that right is before entering stage 4, where we would appeal to the Board of Education.
right.
We would like that opportunity sooner.
Yes, we agree. We would like you to have
We
that.
we would like to have that opportunity before it even goes to formal grievance.
Yes, we agree on that too. Okay, I had trouble seeing that.
And that is
E2.
C2.
C2.
that what
Oh,
it is?
I was in the wrong area.
And then
Okay,
the-
I'm sorry.
E2, right?
Is
It's E22.
E2, E2, C2.
C2, yeah.
E2.
E2C2.
At the next available PPR&R committee, the alleged grievance will be reviewed for the purposes of advising the aggrieved and proposing potential resolutions to seek. At this meeting, the committee will review the elements of a grievance presented for eligibility to enter into the formal grievance process.
And would you retain that right throughout the whole process, or would that just only be at that stage 1?
So, let's see, hold on one moment. So. Yes, so at each part of the formal process, though, I've maintained the language, let's see. Let me give me a good example. Here it is, like, if you look at, for example, F2C. Within 5 school days of receiving the determination from F2B, if the aggrieved is not satisfied with the determination in and with the agreement of the association, the written grievance will move to the next step. So
Okay.
each time it's always with agreement of the association, we will proceed forward.
Right, and the language in C2 Is that strong enough? Do you want stronger language around that? Because it really is like, at this meeting, the committee will review the elements of a grievance presented for eligibility to enter into the formal grievance process. It doesn't explicitly state that like you could end it there if you want.
I'm okay with adding language to give the union a little bit more strength in that
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, I think we can add something about the
Yeah.
committee will make a determination, and we have
Sure.
we have those determination steps anyway
Yep.
in our process.
But yes, right, and that is a big goal here, is to give the union more ability to not push forward grievances that the writing's on the wall for. Right?
Yeah, excellent. I think.
Frivolous in
Frivolous
nature.
in nature. is
Frivolous in
what-
nature was where my brain was, but yeah. Again, I don't want to downplay anyone's emotions or reason that they would want to pursue this process. But there are other avenues for addressing that type of issue, and it's not the formal grievance process.
Great. Question on, where am I here? Hold on. E2G.
Yes, this is the simplified version, by
Yeah.
the way. from our current language.
I appreciate no Roman numerals either, 'cause,
Right, E2G.
if the grievance is resolved at any point during the informal grievance process, a resolution will be final and binding for the aggrieved. And I hear that. I appreciate it. I feel like anecdotally, don't ask me to like recite chapter and verse, but I feel like there could be an opportunity for both the union and management to at least be notified.
I-
So that we can say, have you guys really thought this through? Or rather than,
Notification.
I'm not trying to delay things at the settling at the lower level, but just at least notification for both of us, and maybe at labor management, president, and whoever we're meeting with can be
No,
like, hey,
You cited the number, I read the thing, and my brain was, man, notification needs to be given to folks so that they know resolution was reached and right, because again, more transparency, more information, that's going to be better for everyone involved.
yeah, and maybe if you're comfortable with it, like within 15 school days of the resolution at the, I don't like the word lower, at the initial level,
Right,
Informal-
You know,
the
engaging.
Informal.
It-
we could, either side could say like, hey, we want to pause on this because of these three things. We need to figure this out more. You folks haven't thought about this broadly, or how it could impact the member or the building, or you missed something. We would just want the opportunity.
Sure, and I did intentionally leave hard date limits or date limits in the informal process out, with the understanding that both sides need to feel like there is progress moving forward.
Yeah.
So if we say, hey, we need a couple weeks, are you okay with that? As long as both sides are saying, yes, we think that's fine, then we're in agreement that there's progress going forward.
And
Mhm.
that's very common. I know when Catherine and I are working together, there's often like all right, let's check in about this in 3
Right.
weeks. So
And,
I would agree with that.
and if we look at our current process, it really doesn't afford us that time.
Yeah.
And I think on H is good, but could we add at the end, I'm not sure of the punctuation, but comma, unless agreed to by both parties. So like, I can see circumstances where informal grievances, at the, what I'm calling the local level, both the union and district could be like, we want to implement this more broadly, right? So it just
Yeah.
gives us the opportunity to utilize grievances at a low level.
I would want to put it in writing.
Yeah,
I
right.
think one of the things that I think is really important to all pieces of the grievance process, because the way that it was formally written was the first informal stage was all verbal. And it wasn't until the grievance escalated that
Yeah.
it got put into writing.
Mhm.
And I just stopped doing that, and I put things into writing because the writing is what gives you the ability to actually say we solved the problem.
Yeah,
So I think that to do that, we would want to say like, unless mutually agreed by the parties in writing on H there.
In writing.
Right, so at the informal stage, whoever's handling it, principal and employee will put things in writing, right? And then maybe we should have that be the mechanism that it goes to the union president and, HR. So that we can at least put on our radar screens like, oh, here's the issue. We should get involved more quickly, or we can relax and let that play out. And it would be an early mechanism.
So some kind of central notification that there is an informal grievance at the being
Mhm.
negotiated at the building level, heads up, this is what it's about, like maybe even just. sharing a
Yeah.
copy of
Yeah,
it.
I would suggest then though, that goes into 2B. Right, that's the within 60 days, they're notifying the association through the means developed by the associations, which is our form. Which is where we get into right
Well,
at the
then
first
maybe
though,
that's the point where the association then notifies
the district,
the district through labor management
yeah,
meeting. Like, it would be good for me to give Zach a heads up, hey, they're working on a grievance on this thing over at this school. But I don't think we need to get involved in it yet. Let's see how it.
Or
plays
we
out.
do.
Or we do need to get,
Like,
or they should not solve this by themselves. We should get involved in
Yeah.
this.
right, but that, when they notify us, that's where we get it in writing for the first time.
Yeah, but then it becomes
And-
our,
and
then
then
it
it's-
becomes our responsibility to notify
Yes,
the district.
yeah,
I think that's
that seems
reasonable.
very reasonable to me.
So are we at 2B?
2B seems a little late for the early notification.
Well, we can't,
That's the first time we are getting notified
yeah,
as well.
we can't
Right,
notify.
currently, but if we have the opportunity to put employee and principal, because usually it's principal or director, on notice that per the contract, if you get a grievance, principal, you got to send it to HR and the union president. Like, I received this grievance from your employee. I'm notifying you that we're working on it informally.
Yes.
And yeah, maybe.
Something like that. I don't like to be surprised by grievances.
Yeah, notification. I think we're in agreement.
Yeah.
We want
Notification at some
notification
point.
and as early as possible is nice.
Yeah. But sometimes,
Before
yeah.
2G.
Yeah.
I'm
You-
sorry.
2B is before 2G, so you were suggesting it happen in 2G.
Well, the question was, does it go up to 2A?
Yeah,
But
I think,
but
I-
my concern is, look, should members know what how they have to do the process? Yes. Will everyone do that process the way they are supposed to do it? No. So my suggestion is with the 2B, that's the first time where the union itself is formally involved in the process, and that burden we can take on. Right, that is the first time where we can take that affirmative action to notify you. Whereas an individual member knowing that they have to do it or they've foregone their rights doesn't feel good.
okay, no, I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
It's also a lot of like. Well, not anymore, but I could have walked by my principal's office and been like, hey, this thing happened and it felt awful. And the principal was like, oh, I can fix that for you right now. And they fix it. And then it goes away.
That's what I was.
Did I technically have an informal conversation with my building leader about an adverse working condition that they then resolved? Did either party recognize that we were negotiating a grievance? Probably not. I think that it's once it becomes the like, hey, I talked to them and this still doesn't feel right. Can you help me? Is kind of how it is how members experience it.
Okay,
And I think we're perfectly content with saying, if a member is coming to us and saying, I tried to solve a problem on my own or with my building rep's assistance and we couldn't solve it and we need your help, that's the appropriate time to let you all know that someone has come forward with that.
excellent.
And I always tell my building reps, if you solve something at the building level, please just write a summary of the conversation and get it to, I mean, it's really to Jake, but get it to us so that we know about it.
Okay. I know we want to keep things moving along in terms of the grievance process as well as today. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
um, but, so,
Stuff, and we have 40 minutes, well, we have
yeah.
we've
like
got time.
25 minutes before we have to set an agenda for next.
And some of this maybe in the future, we can
Sure, but
collaborate,
this is
email,
nothing set
yeah.
in stone and, nothing's permanent till you're dead.
Any
and even
sense
then,
of,
God negotiates.
yeah, the formal grievance, the days of getting things done within 5 school days, within 5 school days?
Yes, so
It goes by quick.
yes, and that the purpose here is we have extended the amount of time which what used to be our 1A-B process.
Yeah.
Right? We have created a much larger window. By the time we are getting to a formal process, everything should have already had a discussion with the building leader, with like Zach or Dr. Brown, right? We've had those conversations already. Folks should be informed,
Mhm.
and now we are moving to final determinations.
Would you be okay with a comma unless agreed to by both parties?
Yes.
Otherwise,
A
a member might be like, you guys
no,
aren't
that
doing
seems
right by me.
very
Yeah.
reasonable, right? Yeah, unless agreed to by both parties seems a very reasonable addition in there. And again, still keeps, it still keeps the control.
Okay.
Distribute.
So for F2 to read formal grievances, we'll use the following procedures and timelines unless
But
agreed to.
Or you could put it, it's like 2B has within, at the final
Yeah.
words are within 5 school days.
Probably anywhere where there's a number.
Right,
Okay.
so anytime we've got the 5 school days, it would be or unless agreed to. Agreed to.
And then same section number D, about third line down,
Sure.
association will file an appeal. So like if the member is not satisfied at that stage, you will file. Is that consistent with what you were seeking in terms of owning
And with the agreement of the association.
will file?
You want it to the association may file an appeal or will file?
No, because it's so if the aggrieved is not satisfied with the determination and with the agreement of the association will file the appeal. Like that's meant to just say it's our responsibility to file the appeal because we're already agreeing to it. If we don't agree to it, then we don't have to do it.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. And I didn't say it before, but for all of these, I did reference school days with a notable, like with the exception of arbitration. And that's to simplify from the 3 different kinds of days that were part of the previous process, where we use school days, business days, and calendar days. Right, and all have different implications in the
Yeah,
timeline.
yeah.
So the goal here was to simplify,
Yeah.
to make a consistent practice.
Gotcha.
For F, it outlines 5 school days of the hearing. The board will deliver its determination on the grievance. Just sometime 5 days for the board might be a challenge. I would defer here, but
I mean, within 5 days of the board meeting.
Yeah.
We could
Yeah.
deliver,
right.
right?
So
But
they
the
could
board-
hear your hearing and it could be weeks before they meet again. So just some language that makes it reasonable.
I'm cool with reasonable. These are, again, these ones are a little bit tighter and close. This is the same language as what we had.
Yeah. No, I
This is the
understand.
previous, this is the existing language.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's after they already held the hearing.
could, this is a question for Sean, could the language of F2E be revised so that it's not a number of school days, but it's at the next executive session?
Yes. My only hesitation is about sort of saying executive session as opposed to the next vote, scheduled voting meeting. Is what I was saying, I presume it'd be an exec session, right, but.
Yeah, I mean, we should always do grievances in exec session.
So for E, you're proposing we change within 15 school days to at the next.
But sometimes you will call an emergency executive session on the same day as committee meetings because there's something pressing that needs to be discussed. Whereas if we say at the next voting meeting, then we're,
I don't want to delay it for the employee's sake, but I always have to remember these folks are volunteers too.
That's why
Right, so what I'm thinking is maybe within 15 school days or at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, whichever is longer. Because if they're not going to meet within that 15 days, I don't feel we should try to force a meeting. And
Mhm.
the board meets at least once a month in regular session. So, you know, has there been a
Yeah.
month that was missed because of snow or something? Yeah, but you know,
Look, I think on our end, we're asking to allow this timeline to come out so that we can take things in at our regularly monthly meetings.
Yeah.
It seems only fair to extend the same courtesy.
okay, no,
So
appreciate it.
Bob, just for clarification, you said whichever comes last of those two events?
Whichever is longer, right? So if the board, well, I should sort of say we gotta clear this through the board. I'm actually thinking, you know, if the board meets in 8 days, that might not be, you might have a full agenda by then. It's like, you know, trying to fit something in, rush something in.
I understand the purpose is to try to
Yeah,
or anticipate things that we have not anticipated. Can that be added to the list?
yeah, yeah.
But this currently has not been an issue.
Yeah.
No, you're saying is that thing is good until it isn't as well.
Right.
Right, but if the board, my response, probably assuming Joe agrees, my response would be, if the board is required to meet on a pressing issue, then that's part of our duties as volunteers who took the oath. And then we would have to try to make that happen.
Right.
So I appreciate trying to give grace, and we haven't had a situation where this has pushed us beyond that at this point in time.
And I think just as a counterpoint too, that again, this becomes part of the formal grievance process. We have gone through exhaustive conversation first.
Yeah.
And before we even get to E, there could be as many as 4 weeks on this expedited timeline before it gets to the board.
Okay.
Right, like there should be enough notice that this is coming down the pike to prepare adequately.
Bob, to your point, I have more of a concern, not about the board holding space for an appeal or a hearing. I have more concern about the board's timeline to respond in writing.
Sure.
That's the part that.
Okay.
Because we can all be in the room together, that's fine, I'll hear the appeal, but finalizing how the board decides. to
Sure.
hold it may be a little more complicated, from my perspective.
What is reasonable then from your perspective?
Maybe that's when it is, go into 10 days. I don't know if
Right.
that is too much, but that
Is-
is.
Because yeah, so it's because as it currently stands, that is your timeline. Is 5 days
Yeah.
from the hearing to provide in writing. And so we were asking for 10?
Yeah,
We
that's
feel
fine.
okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, that seems reasonable.
I mean, our folks know if they're entering the formal grievance process, that it takes a long time to resolve grievances. And having the clear timeline to say, from this day, it could take up to this many days is, as long as the clarity is there, I don't think anyone is. People get antsy, but that's fine.
And number 5,
Yeah.
again, I don't think it's been a problem. I can't remember in my time here that it's been a problem, but maybe in anticipation that it could be an issue, maybe like the parties will endeavor
Yeah.
to, and so if for some reason we, you know, it doesn't make sense to, what's the language here, reduce by, you know, pro rata so that the grievance can be exhausted prior to the end of the school term. And there's a lot going on during that last month too, for both
Yeah.
union, teachers. So maybe an opportunity here to
Yeah.
soften that language for both sides.
How about we did something like the time limits will be. I'm tempted to just say that in the event a grievance is filed on or after June 4th, the parties will make every effort to resolve the issue before the end of the school year. Right? And if that cannot be done, timelines will be set
All right,
at that time.
sure. That sounds good. Thank you.
Sure.
The other thing would be G3. I know it's in there, but you know, again, we're hoping through our transparency that members will read and know and live their contract and that the public knows, but getting an arbitrator to do anything within 14 calendar days is, yeah. So it's out of our hands, right? We can mutually agree to ask the arbitrator to move it along.
Yeah, none of this has changed language. So by all means, I'm open to suggestion here. This is the arbitration part I kept as was. I simplified the language, but I kept the pieces that were already in existence.
Yes, we can ask, we can't force them.
Sure. So something like asked. You know the fix we want. Yes, excellent. Yes, language cleanups for sure.
All right.
But it sounds like a whole,
Yeah.
as a full package, we like what's happening here.
So can we communicate that we've reached agreement pending revision on this?
After all that, yes.
What?
Excellent.
We're not doing that again.
Oh, this is the fun stuff.
Oh.
This is, yeah, this. You've never sat in a PLC full of English teachers.
Oh.
Lowercase associations, but I don't want to say anything.
This is what we do. The parsing of words. Great. So we reached agreement pending revision on that. It is 12:32. We're scheduled to be here until 1, but we need to set an agenda for next session. I'm wondering, do we actually have time to discuss progressive discipline?
I would defer to, let's set the agenda, and we've done a lot of good work today, so I appreciate it.
And finishing a few minutes early is always a good idea.
I am never opposed to finishing a little bit early.
Let's get the agenda.
There's discussion to have on the remainders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so our next meeting is February 27th from 4 to 8 p.m. in this room. I gave us a potential agenda of starting with any housekeeping, including we're more likely to have more people in the gallery that day. So going over the rules of the room, talking about how to pass notes and things like that. That we start with any withdrawals of proposals, presenting new counter proposals, presenting if there's a revision to the whatever we just talked about. 52 and 53. 52 and 53. That we do that first. That we pick up with 54 through 57. After that. And then where do we want to go?
Get some money.
Then we go to money?
Yeah.
We go to 1.
Salary. Come on, Tammy, come on.
Because we have not yet gotten enough information from NICET and we have a week break next week, that's going to be really hard for us to get our team to analyze the NICET documents. Can we make that a March agenda, not the February 27th, just because we won't have time to prepare?
Agree. Can we at least talk about in broad terms? We are in the process of putting together budgets, going into budget season. To push it too far into March, I would just, I'll have a pause. But I would like to get on the record and us just talking about if there's some work we can be doing. You know where we are. We're at the 4. And I need to know what we need to do to get y'all to consent to that first agreement proposal.
Well, you know where we are with that.
I'll buy dinner on that night too. Not for everybody in the gallery, but for if I can get y'all's orders. And then we'll get our orders because we're gonna be working hard that night. I'm serious about that part. Like I want to get your orders so we can have food here.
We're just waiting on some documentation. I will do my best to try and push that along. If we can get it, I don't see any reason why we can't discuss it if Brian is ready to go.
We would also need that documentation, data from, about employee credits.
So I think we provided that.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, I think I sent that over to you.
Providing service, but not grad credits.
I
I
thought
think
that
it's-
was a grad
gonna
credit
say that.
college.
Also saying he's going to, and yes.
All right, we'll make sure we
We'll
get you
double check. Maybe
all
you and I
that.
can talk. We'll check.
So then start with proposals 54 through 57, and then shift the conversation to financials, and in that conversation is also proposal 1 of how many, are we doing a 2-year? Or
2 or
3-year?
3.
Yep. So it's really our proposal 1, 2, and 3 plus district salary. Because I think that we can't talk about the salary without talking about the COLA. They need to.
I agree, yeah.
So yeah, so. Length, salary. And COLA.
Thank you all. very
Thank
much.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Okay.
it. That was fun.
And, who's the for the districts?
Gretchen and Brian are gonna connect with you about on.
Communication.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
And I'm gonna come over and sign that MOA.
Emily's been sick, so I don't know. Emily needs the print, but I can.
I was gonna be like, should we text him, but I don't have my phone with me.